Introducing the new product, the model pretended to be very hot. The new game promised to provide the user with real sensations. Here you could realize all your fantasies. Some player could become a huge monster and fight with the others, or flying on giant dragons which could be caught or raised yourself. The feeling of flying was real. In addition, a game called Nine Heavens allowed you to get rich overnight and opened up new perspectives. To conclude the commercial, the expert panel showed off their new gaming helmet that changes the shape of the user's body. Lu Chen was sitting in a wheelchair at this time and scrutinizing the game company's booklet. The plasma TV with the commercials was hosting whole crowds. The guy sadly remembered that everything had changed after the announcement of the game. Unfortunately, he couldn't afford a normal life right now. He could only hope that all this publicity was true. Not so long ago, the young man worked in a large office with a good salary. Prospects opened up before him. But one night he was picked up and beaten up by hooligans. This completely changed the young boy's whole life. The treatment was very expensive. Lu Chen had to sell all his property to pay for it and left the hospital as an invalid. Now his sister Lu Yi was courting him. Many people were saying behind the boy's back that he was a burden to the young girl. The girl loved her brother very much. She was very fond of her brother, and it hurt her when he was silent. Lu Cheng was eagerly waiting for the game to be released. Now it was the only chance for him to free himself and let his sister live her life. Players who tried out the new product boasted that everything had changed forever for them. Some gained new abilities. What appealed to the guy the most was that the game would give him the opportunity to regain immobile limbs and get rid of the wheelchair. The young man didn't believe that the game had such magical properties, but he decided to check it out. He could always kill himself. Lu's family lived in a small 3-story cottage. Today the boy spent the whole day in the stores doing shopping. When Lu Chen put the grocery bag on the table, a notification came on his phone. His sister was very busy and asked to have dinner without her. The young man ate quickly and unpacked the box containing the game helmet. He hoped that the game would really provide new opportunities. Lu Chen carefully put on the blue virtual reality helmet. To his surprise, the cyber helmet sat on his head like a snug fit. The entire space around him began to distort. The pixels that made up the digital assistant quickly flew in front of my eyes. A system panel appeared in front of the young man. The girl asked him to log into the system. Lu Chen didn't think long and chose the nickname Wei Wodu Quan for the gaming world. The system approved the nickname and it was unique. In the same second, the young man was transported to a mountainous area. The girl informed him that the first level of the game was starting here. The boy looked at his hands and was surprised to find that they had been replaced by animal paws with sharp claws. Lu Cheng almost sobbed. His rich experience told him that in games like this, you could choose your appearance and clothing. But here there was no race of people at all. His character immediately became a hijackal. The young man could not understand how money was made here. The guy grabbed his head in a panic and was horrified to find that the head also belonged to the monster. He demanded to see the character profile. From the brief characteristics, it was clear that his character belonged to the jackals. All abilities were at the basic level. Lu Cheng couldn't believe that the system had treated him so cruelly and turned him into a weak werewolf. Suddenly, it hit the young man. Despite the seeming disadvantages, the game provided what he wanted. Now the boy could walk on his own feet. Duquan made a few movements and touched his powerful biceps. Lu Cheng couldn't believe it. It was as if he could feel his body. The young man was finally able to catch up. Duquan was overjoyed and ran for his life. It was an inexpressible feeling. After reaching a tall rock, he jumped on it and howled with happiness, sharing his joy with the entire gaming world. Suddenly, the jackal realized he had stumbled upon some humans. One of the girls was clearly pointing at him and shouted to the others that she had found a werewolf. There were as many as 5 pretty girls standing in front of him. They looked at Duquan with disdain and advised him to get away. The young man cried. Being ugly is hard enough. The only thing that made him happy was that he could find rookie clothes here. The girls rushed at the werewolf with laughter, discussing the price of his bat. It was worth 300 dragon coins. Duquan adopted a fighting stance, preparing to defend himself. He wished he could sell his weapons now. Shin was the first to get hit by the jackal and exclaimed that it had a lot of damage. This attack cost her 3 points of health. The others ran up to help and shouted that they would help. The 5 of them could do it. Quan showered them with punches, but missed a few himself. This situation was becoming unfavorable. I could only hope that other werewolves might take the initiative to attack humans. The young man was right. A moment later, several werewolves with clubs came out of the bushes and immediately started advancing on the girls. The human race had to take up a circular defense. One of them exclaimed that it wasn't fair. There were more than a dozen of them. The fight looked completely different now. The girls were dodging, but the blows were coming at them from all directions. Duquan smiled. This kind of battle was much more to his liking. There was a chance to take revenge on the girls who had attacked him. At the right moment, the jackal struck one of the girlfriends on the back with his club. The girl froze on the spot and fell down. The system notified the Shinshin player of the kill and reported the rewards provided, including monster reputation points. Duquan had gotten the hang of it. He realized that killing players was a good income, so it wouldn't hurt to kill a few more. Not a few seconds later, 2 more girls scattered into pixels, and the werewolf got his well-deserved reward. In addition, on the battlefield, the young man found a vial of blood return medicine. It was a valuable commodity. Duquan thought that it could be bought at the store. Unfortunately, there was no potion there. But the boy realized that the store could improve the werewolf's combat characteristics. Based on the fact that his character originally had a weapon and good attack power, he should have killed others and gained experience points. Just a short distance away from him was the exact same werewolf, unaware of what his fellow werewolf was up to. Duquan decided to try his attack on him. The jackal howled in intense pain. The blow to his head took 5 points of health from him. The young man found that the other werewolves weren't attacking him. The werewolves ran away with their tails tucked, losing some health. Kuduan ran after them at a gallop, swinging his club. They didn't get far. The jackal, having finished them both, proudly placed his paw on the back of his fallen tribesman and drank the entire vial of the potion. The system offered other rewards for werewolves. They were more valuable, plus there were some things to sell. What Duquan was most excited about was the evolution fragment. Not only could it be sold, but it could also be developed further. There were 3 more werewolves standing nearby. He was glad to rush at them with his club, knowing they wouldn't attack. 10 minutes later, the weak jackal turned into a muscular monster. His appearance changed and his strength increased. Lu Chen finally realized that being a werewolf was much better than being a human. He was glad that the game was very realistic. Suddenly, Duquan heard some shouts nearby and calls to attack. He cautiously turned his head. The jackal's mood instantly soured. He had expected to see anything but this. 3 large guys with clubs were approaching Linzi. A lustful smile could not be seen on their faces. It turned out that the character could be stripped with a swing of a bat. The girl was left in only a tank top and shorts. She shouted angrily that the young people were behaving inappropriately even for a game. Her partner had already returned from the game world and offered to leave the newcomer village. It turned out that Linzi had signed a contract with the developers and couldn't just walk out. Taichi said that the girl has a great physique. He even suspects that it is a figure from her real life. Lu Cheng wasn't going to stand there and wait for 3 guys to beat up a defenseless girl. The jackal snapped out of his seat and jumped forward. The bat strike he received made the young man's eyes darken. He never had time to attack Linzi with his partners. Turning around, the disgruntled Taichi was surprised to find a werewolf with a bat beside him. He had a menacing look. The guy shouted to the surprised Feng Tian to help him at least a little, need to deal with the jackal. The young man didn't have time to attack. Duquan was faster and struck first. Feng Tian shouted that he needed help. This jackal was stronger than the others. Lu Cheng was satisfied that he had found a blood recovery medicine. His character drank another vial and rushed forward. His strength now was even enough to scatter his opponents in different directions with his bare hands and run on. After receiving a strong blow to his back, Xiaosheng flew forward with wild cries. No one had ever hit him so hard before. Crouching down beside the defeated enemies, Duquan took out a salvation bottle. Unfortunately, there was only 1 bottle per person. Linzi watched in amazement as her enemies disappeared into the ocean of pixels. She couldn't believe that the monster had helped her. The girl took out 2 vials and handed them to the werewolf, thanking him for saving her. The girl took out 2 vials and handed them to the werewolf, thanking him for saving her. Duquan thanked Linzi and took the potion. The girl was even more surprised. This jackal was also a talking jackal. As the werewolf withdrew, she received a call. The company's management asked to start a promotional campaign for the game's release. Duquan realized that there was a newcomer village nearby. People could be found everywhere. Therefore, it was better to stay away. He got to the monster lawn and decided to take a little break and watch the official commercial at the same time. Linzi solemnly announced the start of the server. 80,000 people had already joined. Duquan broke away from the videotape and furtively looked at the 2 werewolves behind him. He was very pleased that there were many beasts here. In a matter of seconds, the young man had slaughtered 3 weak jackals. They hardly even resisted him. After a while, Duquan was sitting on a small slide of defeated bodies, but it wasn't enough. The necessary elements could fall out of stronger enemies. At that moment, the system notified the improvement of the werewolf's talent. Now even a normal attack could deal a critical blow. Lu Cheng rejoiced. His character was getting stronger and stronger. The only bad thing was that there were only basic evolutionary shards. Calling up the system menu, the guy learned that he had to connect 10 level 0 fragments to get 1 level 1 shard. It all came down to killing higher level monsters. Duquan decided to start with jackals that reached his level. After a few minutes, the 2 containers were finished. As a reward, the werewolf received 2 level 0 fragments. A series of kills resulted in an overall level increase. Unfortunately, the equipment did not improve. Duquan realized that a serious opponent was needed. Not far from him, a strong jackal was just strolling by. It looked twice as big as he was. The young man thought that this was exactly the kind of enemy he needed. Duquan walked furtively behind his opponent. He looked stronger, but he was a level below him. Besides, the recovery medicine should help. To the lad's surprise, he could only deal 8 points of damage, but the menacing jackal took as much as 12 from him. The difference in strength was obvious. Duquan realized that it was better to flee now. He would not be able to defeat such an opponent. The large beast did not think of retreating, so the young man had to take the fight and continue what he had started. The duel lasted for a full 5 minutes. There was a good reward for killing a level 1 monster, but I had to spend some potion. On the other hand, the goal had been achieved. Duquan had finally obtained a level 1 evolution shard. It was worth the effort. In addition, the system rewarded him with a slightly bigger and better gray metal bat for his victory. The young man couldn't believe his eyes. His character had received a new piece of equipment. From the looks of it, the bat was pretty good. Jackal compared the 2 bats carefully. The new one was more massive and longer. Duquan decided to see if he could sell the old one. The system store offered bits of varying damage and quality. The price depended very much on the level of the weapon. The guy regretfully realized that the average price for such a bat was up to 100 yuan, so he decided to try to sell it for 260. Strangely enough, a buyer was found almost immediately. Duquan was happy to sell him an entry-level bat. At the same moment, a system notification arrived. The assistant offered to open the email that came to the user's address. It turned out that the system transferred 247 yuan minus the fee to the linked bank card. Lu Chung couldn't believe it was true. He reread the letter with disbelief and decided to check the notification on his phone. It turned out to be true. The designated amount was indeed transferred to his bank account. The young man began to jump for joy. He was no longer a burden to his sister and could earn money on his own. The experts weren't lying. With the help of this game, every user really got unlimited opportunities for development. Emboldened by his success, the level 2 jackal found a few more enemies and was victorious in a matter of minutes. The werewolves lacked agility. As soon as one of them ran towards his opponent, Duquan jumped up and brought the bat down from above. Another opponent simply received a painful blow to his neck. After that, he could not resist for long. 10 minutes later, it was over. The jackal walked around the enemies and finished them off in a deliberate manner, so that the victory would be counted for sure. Thus, Duquan was able to reach the 3rd level quite quickly. His characteristics increased significantly. The young man's only regret was that he had killed as many as 20 weak jackals and 1 strong one, but nothing useful fell out. The werewolf realized that he should find stronger and more agile level 2 monsters. The rewards would be better. Duquan knew that 5 nimble jackals could be found nearby. He spotted a 2nd-level fellow and beat him with a bat. This monster was too easy to kill, so the guy decided to hurry up and find the other 4. A heavy blow to his shoulder robbed him of 9 points of health. The astonished jackal was faced by his angry sibling with a bump on his head. Duquan couldn't understand why these monsters were doing so little damage. It was almost the same as the 1st level. The boy finally met a strong opponent. They fiercely pelted each other with blows. The fight was not easy. After a bit of thought, the young man realized that because of the small level of development, agility and speed did not greatly affect the outcome of the fight. Duquan tracked down the location of the opponents and dealt with them one by one. It took him 40 minutes to do so. After the fight, the exhausted werewolf crouched on his knee beside his defeated foes, leaning on his bat. It was time to look at his updated profile. It appeared that he could now deliver a double critical hit with a 10% chance of success. Duquan was very excited about this opportunity. With each level, his capabilities grew wider and wider, and the game became more and more addictive. In addition, the system offered a choice of strength, agility, or physique. After some thought, the young man chose strength. The strength stats were immediately increased by 5 points. In general, the combat characteristics looked pretty good. Duquan was satisfied. He had finally become a strong jackal. He decided not to stop there and develop further. Half an hour later, the level had risen again. The trophy bits had accumulated quite a lot, so it was possible to sell them. After a short thought, the young man put up 5 bits at once at a price of 300 yuan. He was sure they would be taken even at that price. Jackal sighed heavily and closed the store. He had only reached level 4. The best was ahead of him. 5 notifications came one after another on the system screen. The boy realized that they were notifications from the bank. Duquan was surprised to see that all 5 batons left the store quite quickly. He received almost 300 yuan for each one. This could already be called earnings. The happy jackal calculated that he had earned 1,700 yuan in half a day. Ziling also had joy. She finally found a decent weapon at the system store at a good price. Admittedly, it was unclear where the average player would get so many bits, given that it was the strongest level in the county. The girl called up the system menu and typed in the username. The vendor's name was not in the first half 1,000 players. After scrolling through the list to the end, the marketer was even more surprised. She herself was not on the list, despite her level. Suddenly, Ziling realized why his name was not displayed in the system. The user only sells used bits, but doesn't use them. It was just about time for the broadcast, and the girl proudly told the audience that the game server already has 100,000 users. The popularity of the game was gaining frantic momentum, with many people wanting to play arguing for the right to enter online. One of the girls was unhappy with everyone around her and ranted about them. The users looked at her in bewilderment. At this time, Ziling was cheerfully advertising from the screen a marvelous level 1 bat that was great for starting the game. Duquan now understood why this bat was so popular. It really wasn't bad. Oh, and the race was lucky. It's hard for players to get on the server now. The young man estimated that there were about 30 monsters left in the area. Not enough to pump up a jackal. He sighed and closed the system menu. About a dozen monsters came running towards the werewolf. While dodging the blow, Duquan saw 4 bigger opponents. With each kill, the character's abilities increased. It turned out that the monsters were special and a level above the guy. The dexterity had not been gained for nothing. After a successful counterattack, another werewolf fell to the grass, letting out a dying sigh. For a level 5 monster, the system gave a generous amount of aura and shards. The monster also left behind a bat. Duquan looked at the specifications and almost started dancing with excitement. This rare bit added 2 points to strength. In addition, 2 points were added to the user's attack, and defense was increased by 1. The young man quickly calculated all the coefficients of the new outfit. It was obviously an expensive thing. He was very afraid of being cheap. The decision came quickly. There will obviously be many connoisseurs on the forum who know the true price of such a weapon. Unfortunately, no one took him seriously. One of the guys said that he didn't even have an ordinary bat. Lu Chen got angry and left the forum. He had expected to immediately receive sound advice on how to use the unique modification. Suddenly, it hit the jackal. He was in such a hurry to find out all about the marvelous bat that he had forgotten about the auction. He was sure to get a fair price here. The young man put the weapon up for auction with an initial bid of 1,000 yuan. He hoped he could sell it for 1,800. Duquan closed the system window. He hoped that in half an hour he would already have his money. The guy dreamed that the bat would be bought for 3,000. One of the bidders couldn't believe her bat was being given away so cheaply. This vendor had recently sold 5 clubs for an adequate price. After defeating a couple more enemies, Duquan leaned over them victoriously. His level had risen to the 5th level. Suddenly, the jackal sensed the presence of another monster. The boy was right. The analysis showed the presence of a particularly voracious level 6 jackal. This was the kind of enemy that was already dropping level 2 shards. Grinning maliciously, the monster rushed forward to attack. Duquan decided to finish it off by all means. Even though the opponent was significantly larger, thanks to the guy's double critical hits, he was dealing tangible damage. Leaning over the defeated jackal, the young man happily realized that he had gained valuable rewards and decided to hunt such monsters now. By midnight, Duquan himself had reached level 6. He complained that it was taking a lot of experience to level up and opened his character profile. Jackal's efforts were not in vain. After receiving a level 2 evolutionary shard, his characteristics doubled. The young man stretched and yawned sweetly. He decided to get off the net and rest for a while. The monsters from the village weren't going anywhere. The bat he received turned out to be the most ordinary bat, so it was safe to bid it out for 300 yuan. It was time to see if Lu Yi had come home. Guy really wanted to brag to her about the money he had earned. Taking off his helmet, Lu Chen exhaled. He had spent quite a bit of time in the Nine Heavens game and was glad to finally return to reality. Suddenly, the young man was surprised to realize that his leg was warming. He gently suggested that he might actually be able to walk in the future. The boy's mood immediately lifted. Now he knew for sure that he hadn't wasted his money on a used gaming helmet. Behind his back, the door creaked open. Lu Cheng immediately realized that it was his sister. The young man stopped smiling. His cheerful mood disappeared. The guy realized that due to increased family expenses, the girl had to work overtime and came back late. Lu Yi walked drunkenly into the house. Her face was flushed after drinking alcohol. The girl started to take off her boots. She boasted that she had made a lot of money. Lu Chen rebuked his sister. He had already repeatedly asked her not to drink on the street. Lu Yi leaned over to the guy and announced the glad tidings. Her company would register for the Nine Heavens game, and she would get the lead role. At the head office, the girl was told that the game had endless possibilities. In addition, she was promoted to deputy team leader. Lu Chung stated that it was all very good and asked his sister to get off his lap. He said that he didn't know what to pay attention to anymore. Lu Yi replied that the young man should pay attention to his sister. She wants to spend the rest of her life with him. Before the boy could say a word, the girl leaned over to him and affectionately ruffled his hair, causing him to blush profusely. Lu Yi dropped her brother on the floor and bent over him. She smiled and said that the release of the game had attracted hundreds of millions of people around the world. The largest military companies are interested in the new project, so now the girl will be able to take decent care of her brother. Lu Chen hugged the girl and stated that he had a story to tell. He had been in this game for a whole day and had earned enough money. Unfortunately, Lu Yi didn't care anymore. She had drunk so much alcohol that her eyes closed on their own, and she fell asleep. They didn't get to talk in the morning either. His sister had gone to work early and sent a message that she would find a way to get him back on his feet. Lu Cheng had a great night's sleep and immediately pulled on his gaming helmet after breakfast. He couldn't wait to enter the game village. Now the young man was even glad that he was playing the role of a monster. He received almost 4,000 yuan on his card for the outfit. Lindsay started a live broadcast. She complained to the players that she had been playing until the wee hours of the morning, but her character was only level 3. Furthermore, she only managed to do so with the help of a quality bat that Duquan sold. The audience suspected that he was just an overbidder. The girl laughed and said that there was no such thing. As far as she knew, the developers did not conduct closed beta tests. Duquan looked at the pretty streamer girl with interest. He decided that he should send her a small donation. Lindsay received a donation of beast number and was quite surprised that that jackal was watching her live. Immediately afterward, the young man continued pumping his character and killed a couple of level 6 jackals, earning rewards. After 3 hours, the character turned into a huge jackal. He managed to reach the 7th level and accumulated a lot of blood recovery potion. Duquan only disliked the status of the character. His description took up a line and a half, and it couldn't help but be annoying. Apparently, the status description was getting longer with each level. From the next level, it would be visible from afar. Suddenly, the young man noticed that there was a special monster roaming nearby. His status even included the character's name. As it turned out, it was an 8th level saber-toothed jackal master Zhang Kaxie. In addition, there were a dozen high-level monsters along with him. Duquan shook with fear. He realized that he wouldn't be able to deal with all of them at once, and he frantically searched for a way out. There were only 17 useless bits and a bunch of entry-level items in the inventory. That wasn't enough to become stronger. Suddenly, it hit the jackal. Now he knew what he would do next. The young man reproached himself for not having thought of it before. You could spend reputation points in the system store. For example, you could buy the 2nd level of equipment for 50 points. For 10 experience points, you could recruit a monster with the condition that its level was lower than the character's level. Duquan sat down and thought about how lucrative this could be. 10 points seemed like a reasonable amount. Unfortunately, it wasn't exactly what he wanted. Buying a mercenary was cheap, but it required spending 500 reputation points to acquire the next one. The jackal sobbed bitterly. He had worked so hard to obtain level 3 items, but now they would have to be sold. After realizing the items, the young man raised the Legion's recruitment order to level 3, and could now hire 2 mercenaries at once. In order to make the monsters stronger, Duquan mercilessly beat them with a club and turned them into particularly strong jackals. One of them got the worst of it. The werewolf's eyes nearly popped out of his head after a hard swing of the bat. The mercenaries stood and frowned at their master. He realized that each of them needed to improve their combat performance significantly. Raising the level of his jackals, the young man handed them bats. He was eager to destroy more enemies and improve his financial situation. All 4 of them flew into the thick of the enemy, furiously rewarding them with blows from their powerful batons. The mercenaries were worth the resources they had invested. They struck coherent blows, not allowing the enemy to regain their senses. The enemy fell to the ground one by one. 10 minutes later, the main attack began. Duquan encouraged his mercenary and sent him into battle with the 8th level leader. To his horror, Zhang Kaxie had knocked out more than half of the mercenary's health with his first strike, while he himself had only received 18 points of damage. The young man realized that he would have to intervene. He changed tactics and shouted to the mercenaries that he would distract the jackal. Even an enormous level 8 werewolf couldn't stand against 4 enemies and fell breathless. Duquan was very satisfied. His jackals had become much stronger after the battle, and he himself had obtained excellent level 3 evolutionary shards. In addition, elements of unique equipment of the 5th level fell out of the monster. The young man had never seen such items in the game before. The jackal simply fell in love with the level 5 rock shard bat. Judging by the quality, it was capable of pulverizing rocks. In addition, the character's characteristics increased the already huge damage of the bat. The guy didn't even want to sell it. He ordered the mercenaries to continue killing high-level jackals and to report back as soon as that Zhang Kaishi was revived. The young man decided that his monsters had a better chance of clearing the area of jackals and decided to check in on the broadcast in the meantime. While dealing with the next monster, Lindsay said that the game had already opened a city and everyone would be able to choose a profession. One of the girlfriends asked the streamer if they would create their own group. The girl replied that they would need a lot of resources for that. Such a possibility interested Lu Chen, and he looked at the alliances that had already been established in the game. The young man smiled and dreamily closed his eyes. The game server provided new opportunities for development every day. After 8 hours, Duquan reluctantly started to open his eyes after feeling someone touching his divine nose with a claw. It turned out he had slept for too long. Zhang Kaishi is revived every 8 hours. It's time to visit him. The jackal stretched sweetly and demanded to see his profile. We need to buy some equipment and go hunting. To his surprise, the level had almost risen to 9th level. Duquan surprisingly assumed that the mercenaries had been pumping all night. All 3 of them nodded confidently. The boy smiled happily and put on his gear. With such helpers, he was no longer afraid of the elite jackal. Hefting the bat with the rock fragments on his shoulder, the leader called the mercenaries to hunt. Time to kill a few monsters. After killing Zhang Kaishi, the young man collected his equipment items and 3rd-level evolution shards just like last time. He asked if his mercenaries had collected the equipment left behind by the enemies. The fighters looked at each other in surprise. Duquan looked at the backpack of equipment. There were already 20 bits accumulated in there. Now he could not worry about selling them all. The price of equipment had dropped a bit recently, but it was still possible to get good money for his gear. Other than that, the young man was very interested in what price a green-level bat with rock chips could be sold for. Seeing that the mercenaries were standing and watching his actions, Duquan angrily demanded to continue killing the monsters. There was a lot of discussion on the forum about the elements of white-level equipment. Some people thought that such equipment was impossible to find. Besides, his white gear happened to be the only one in the shop. The young man decided to display the green equipment and see the reaction. Like last time, no one on the forum believed him. Nevertheless, it turned out that worse equipment could be sold for 5,000. Duquan put the bat up for auction with a starting price of 1,000 yuan. He knew he wasn't losing anything. In 8 hours, he would have another one just like it. Lindsay's girlfriend exclaimed that user Duquan put up a green-level bat. The streamer was surprised. There was a white outfit recently. Shan asked if this guy was working alone. Lindsay replied that he was indeed joined by several people. She asked her girlfriend to track down Duquan's ID and let her know when he appeared on the streamer. It would be nice to be friends with the young man. Meanwhile, the guy was not interested in broadcasting. He was busy fighting monsters, trying to reach level 9 as quickly as possible. Looking at the system requirements for the levels, Duquan was surprised. To advance to the 9th level, one had to accumulate 50,000 experience. Suddenly, the young man saw a lot of drops falling near the defeated enemies nearby. He became curious. It turned out there were as many as 15 bottles of a potion that restored the amount of blood left there after the battle. In addition, the same vials were lying everywhere, forming a kind of path. The guy couldn't understand why he would try to kill a monster if he didn't have enough power. Duquan carefully collected all the potion containers he found. There were so many of them that there was definitely not enough money to buy them. It turned out that all the vials were bait. A guy and a girl came out of the bushes discussing the jackal that had fallen for their ruse. The pretty girl couldn't believe the beast was so large, and the interlocutor pointed to the monster's status description and equipment. Duquan began to realize these players liked his equipment. It looked like they were going to kill him. Meanwhile, 3 more guys with bats jumped out of the bushes. One of them was sure that with such equipment, they would be the first to take over the city. The girl hesitantly asked if they could kill him. Her interlocutor exclaimed that compared to Duquan, they were much stronger. Not doubting his superiority in the slightest, the guy boldly jumped at the monster with his club, offering to assess its strength. Duquan stood calmly and waited for the strike. He knew that the attack wouldn't hurt him. The powerful bat strike only took away 1 point of his health. The young man only now realized something was wrong. The jackal grinned, as if he'd been tickled rather than hit on the head. One of the guys guessed to look at the character's parameters and exclaimed in surprise that he had over 1,000 health points. Baiju suggested not to panic. They had enough potion. Sooner or later, they would mob him to death anyway. Duquan patiently waited for them to get bored. Any hit would take away no more than 1 point from his health. After many failed attempts, the girl in the blue dress exclaimed puzzledly that she should try harder. The young man knew very well that they could not do more damage. He wondered why they would not admit their helplessness. Duquan was tired of waiting. His eyes glowed greedily with red lights. The boy promised himself that he was going to have a massacre now. Only the first swing of the bat robbed the guy of 52 points of health. He exclaimed indignantly that he had lost 1/6 of it. The blow to the head took away another 100 points. The situation was becoming critical. The young man shouted that he urgently needed a potion. The kid jumped back and quickly drank the contents of the life-saving health recovery vial in one gulp. One of his partners said it was too late. The potion only restored 10 points per second. Unlike the others, the girl named Nima was determined to kill the big boss and believed in the strength of the group. At that moment, the jackal turned around and hit her hard, nearly turning her top into rags. The girl dropped the bat because of the strong blow. One of the guys saw the monster rushing at the defenseless Nima. One of the guys saw the monster rushing towards Nima, who was defenseless. Duquan grinned gloatingly. He realized that the people had backtracked and now wanted to escape. He wouldn't give them the chance. A few more hard blows, and the boys and Nima fell breathless. The girl's top was barely hanging on after the blows. Thanks to the female warrior, the jackal made a good profit, with 27 vials of magic potion left after Nima. Duquan realized that they had actually come for Jiang Kaishi, determined to seize his equipment. But now, they wouldn't be coming here anytime soon. Meanwhile, the defeated players were busily discussing their defeat in the technical development zone of Zhengcheng City. The young men were all sitting around the table in business suits. One of them suggested that the boss had very rare equipment. The leader stood up from the table and angrily stated that it wouldn't make them lose heart. The only thing unclear was how the loner had managed to kill them all. One of the guys suspected that something was wrong here. He thought that Weiwo Duquan wouldn't be able to kill such a strong jackal by himself. Taking advantage of the break between battles, Duquan reread all of his mail and scrolled through the forum. He decided to see if all the items were sold out. To the guy's surprise, it turned out that the whole outfit was a success. He earned more than 25,000 yuan. There was no shortage of people wanting to talk to him. Many people tried to add him as a friend. Others were interested in equipment. The young man decided not to spend much on communication and sent everyone the same letters. Immediately after that, he left to pump up his skills further. After 8 hours, the character reached level 10. The guy was very tired, but got a lot of gear to sell. The new level opened up more options in the system store. By the looks of it, the body enhancement was worth a look. Unfortunately, the store only sold a jackal look for 1,000 yuan. The young man was puzzled, thinking that he already looked like a jackal. The lineage looked more interesting. By killing creatures of the same species, it was possible to change the method of attack. Suddenly it hit the guy. If the guy's store has the appearance of a man, he could be hiding under the guise of a man. Mana could also be purchased in the store, which allowed the player to use magic attacks and defenses. After looking at the attributes of the magical elements, Duquan decided to sell the shards. With mana, he could achieve stunning success. After purchase, the system informed that the user would not be able to perform any other actions during meditation. Thanks to the purchased mana, the character's strength and dexterity increased. Even with the system open, it was possible to meditate. Liu Chen decided that he had already accomplished a lot today. It was time to put the equipment up for sale and go to bed. Lingzi kept complaining to her girlfriend that there were as much as 20,000 experience units to accumulate before the 7th level. Shan said that their acquaintance had put out the rock debris again. She said Duquan logged onto the stream anonymously and gave the interviewer the guy's 4-digit ID. The girl was very excited. She promised to choose one lucky person from among the subscribers and give him a bat. As soon as Duquan walked into the broadcast, Lindsay congratulated him on winning the grand prize and clapped his hands. Liu Chen couldn't understand what it meant. After all, he had only joined the stream a few seconds ago, but he had received the prize. Lindsay Ji tried to find out Weiwo Duquan's account ID to add him as a friend, but this stranger didn't want to give her his account information, and offered to give the gear to her fans. After 3 minutes of interaction, the stranger asked if there was any way the girl wouldn't give him the equipment, but Lindsay continued to insist that he accept the gift. Lindsay Ji was a good enough girl for him since she had helped him many times before, so it was time to help her as well. The girl's subscribers tried to convince her that this stranger is definitely low-key, so he doesn't want to take a photo of the real himself. Unexpectedly, Weiwo Duquan did accept the friend request, and the viewers learned that he was the one selling the bits, causing them to realize that they had jumped to conclusions a little too quickly. The girl thanked him for accepting the request, and also stated that the poison mist forest leading to the level 10 main city had been opened. Jackal wanted to remove himself from his friends, but realized that it was not nice to remove himself as soon as he got the reward, so he decided to leave everything as it was. He decided to go look at the forest of poison mist the girl had just talked about. This forest was the only way into the main city of level 10, and it was home to a huge number of monsters. Statistically, only one person can escape from this forest. Weiwo still decided to take a risk and enter the poison mist forest. He was curious to see what kind of monsters lived here, if the alert had advised him to immediately run away at the sight of them. But after a very short period of time in the forest, monsters that looked like spiders and most likely very poisonous had already come out at him. They were level 8 forest venomous spiders. With them was a level 9 spider mother. The monsters were very strong that could even defeat him. A wild monster. Wei Wo's plan was that the second jackal would fight 2 spiders. The third and fourth jackal should handle 1 spider each, and he would take on the strongest mother spider. The jackals started fighting the poisonous spiders as best they could, and things were going pretty well until one point. Wei Wo Duquan was poisoned, which was accompanied by a loss of 20 units of blood per second for 5 seconds. But fortunately the damage was not high, so it didn't hurt him much. After 3 minutes, all the monsters that attacked the guys were destroyed, and in return, they received 2 mana points and level 3 shards. The hero also received an armlet of spider silk and 2 pieces of sturdy spider silk. He decided to open the profile to get a closer look at the award. The silk was made of a strong material. The item's strength was in 6th place. Jackal decided to put on the silk now, since he'd have to spend reputation to open the 4th lot of gear at some point anyway. But just as he was getting excited about defeating the monsters and getting the reward, he saw more spiders coming his way. After 5 minutes of fighting, Wei Wo decided to log out and end the game for the day, as his subordinates had not had time to recover in such a short time, so they did not survive the fight. The young man woke up in his chair and pulled his arms up to stretch his muscles with a tired look. Just like that, the realization came to him that he could lift his arms, something that had been impossible for the guy before. His fingers were not so flexible, but he was still able to move them, and the whole upper part of his body became at least a little bit mobile. The young man was called by his sister and asked why he had taken so long to answer. He replied that he had not heard because he was asleep. The girl was telling him about the game, which was difficult for her because of the challenging tasks to level up. And also the boss bought each of them a bat, and now they need to work even harder to level up and make it to the main city. The young man was excited about this game and decided to continue playing it tomorrow. He wanted to be a normal person by the time Lee came and surprised her. On the second day, he entered the forest of poison mist and continued to fight the spiders. After a few battles, he realized that as long as the mother was dying, the rest of the spiders would continue to be reborn. Because of this, they were getting bigger, and it was already a problem. Suddenly, he saw an alert that his second level 7 subordinate was dead in battle. This information shocked Wei Wo. He was not prepared to see his close comrade with no signs of life. Most of the subordinates were dead in battle. Even though they were quite strong, they failed to come out victorious this time. The hero was pissed off by this, as he was betraying the maximum of his power to keep his guys alive. 10 minutes later, O left the forest and returned to the newcomer's village. Tears appeared in his sad eyes for the loss of his close comrades. All 3 boys had died. Wei Wo decided to borrow some subordinates from Zhang Kashi to himself when he revived. In that case, he would have to spend time farming them, defending them from monsters, and improving their attributes. On the second day, his team fought the monsters. During this time, he managed to improve the attributes of 3 subordinates, and now they were gaining poison resistance at 10 units per one. As soon as the hero disposed of the boss, as here another one approached him, and small spiders also appeared more and more. The boss this time was a poison widow spider called Alice Anna. She was quite a difficult opponent since she was on level 10. Wei Wo ordered his subordinates to follow him and fight with all their might, after which they need to run further into the forest. Half an hour later, the poison widow was killed, rewarded with 400 aura points, 3 shards of 3rd level talents and attributes each. Surprisingly, a pretty good reward of 3 pieces of gear fell off this boss, one of which was green. The first item was a level 6 poison spider gauntlet. This equipment was under the white color. And the green-colored equipment was a level 8 poison spider necklace. Although it was expensive, but it was still worth spending money on this equipment. Wei Wo decided to play more as these bosses were given to him too easily, and the equipment for them were valuable. For some reason, the bosses here revived too quickly, which is probably why the sign at the entrance to the forest said that only 1 person out of 10 could escape because the monster's revival rate was too high. But this was only providing the hero's pleasure. He approached his subordinates with the information that they were still playing to rack up another 80 tackles. Wei Wo began to fight the boss, hitting her with a huge mace, which was his main weapon. When it was already 5 in the evening, the boys finished off the last group of spiders for the moment. Resentment was heard from the hero because of the strange names, but because the attributes had reached level 3 after half a day, he decided not to give it a huge amount of attention. He had been seeking such attributes for a long time, and now it was time to see if there was something in the Prestige Mall. There, the hero found a poison attack and fast movement speed. Not long. Thinking, he decided to buy these attributes. He also decided to improve the talent of the spider bloodline to level 3. At the same moment, his body began to renew itself, matching the talents he had chosen at the mall. Due to the integration of the new bloodline, His appearance took on a yellowish hue. Because of this upgrade, his body was now half spider. Not the kind of change Weiwu had expected, but there was an upside to it. After integrating the bloodlines, his movement speed became much faster. I guess the system wants to force him to buy skins because of his current body. But he decided to leave the game and grab a bite to eat, as it had been quite a busy day. As soon as he went to read the comments, he saw people there resenting him for not auctioning anything today. And it was because he had sold the rock fragments for over 10,000 yuan and had been farming spiders all day today. But now he has gloves from the Forest of Poison Mist in his backpack, one for the 3 subordinates and one for him. There are also other items, but the other players haven't been to this forest yet, so it's not profitable to sell right now. Suddenly, the young man saw Lin Ziji's discussion and her trek into the forest, who was about to destroy Zhang Kashi with her subordinates. Her entire group was already in the forest. As they suddenly came across Zhang Kashi, the subordinates offered to destroy him, but the girl decided to dissuade them as he had almost destroyed their entire group last time. The girl from the team offered to carefully approach and pick up the rock fragments, but immediately after her words, Lindsay and the entire team rushed forward with loud shouts to pick up those fragments. Suddenly, the girl called Lin Ziji over to take a look at something that really struck her. Running towards them was the strong, agile, and sturdy jackal commander Hebel Tong that was at the 11th level. He shouted out the name of Zhang Kashi, who he ran to help. The guys on the team didn't expect to see someone else so strong here. They tried to reassure themselves that appearances can be deceiving, and he's actually not as strong as he appears, as his face looks confused. They agreed to stop him one person at a time. His long name was amusing to them, but the jackal was so huge that it was even bigger than Zhang Kashi. The guy from the team was the first to go into battle with the jackal. At first he hit him in the head with a bat, but as soon as he saw that the damage was only -1, the guy immediately panicked. And then the team realized that he has 2,000 health and very good damage, so now they need to somehow survive from the paws of this strong jackal. The team decided to make every effort to destroy Zhang Kashi, since they were sure that the jackal was not innate despite its high armor. They believed that its purpose was only to restrain the players. Wei Wo was determined to protect Zhang Kashi, and if they were going to attack him, the jackal was ready to deal with them. He immediately struck the guy with his spider paw. The player had -202 poison damage, and the very next instant he stabbed the guy's body with his paw, the team of youth standing dumbfounded. The guy's damage is 250, and with a little more, he could have died. The guys immediately grabbed the girls and started running away. Wei Wo wondered why they were all staring at him like that. Was he really that handsome? He scattered a poisonous poison over the team. By the time the guys realized what it was too late to take the potion. Many of the players the jackal had defeated were lying on the ground, betraying no signs of life as he ran and fought the others. While the players were arguing amongst themselves to kill Zhang Kashi or not, another jackal appeared behind their backs. Zhang Kashi had a little bit of health left, but there was still time to save him. As soon as the girl turned back and saw the jackal there, the jackal immediately swung a huge bat at her. When the spider paw was too close to Lin Zijie, it immediately reacted and struck at her, which was accompanied by -94 damage. When she saw the scale above her head, she was amazed as she had 60 units of poison damage per second. Wei Wuduquan was enjoying his good earnings at this time. He called his subordinates to go get the potion. While his subordinates were gathering bags of items, he wanted to go to Lin Ziji's streamer to see what other players were doing. The girl at this time was upset as the mission to kill the boss was a failure, as none of the players expected Hebelton to show up and ruin all their plans. The guys speculated that this strong opponent might be Wei Wuduquan, since if he wasn't a Qianxing staff member, they would have defeated him. But their team of 40 people couldn't do it. Pan Shuchangwan interrupted their argument with the words that she was very tired and offered to leave the place. To the surprise of the guys, the girl was not at all worried about their defeat. And then the players remembered that Goddess Wei Wo had Wei Wo as a friend and offered to ask him how he had handled Zhang Kashi. But the girl was not comfortable asking such personal information. The guys immediately began to persuade the goddess to do it, because if he tells, it means he is rich, and just to try to do it is worth it, and the girl still agreed. Lindsay respectfully asked in an email for some tips on how to destroy Zhang Kashi and the Hebelton, but he needed to go through the Poison Mist Forest and then sell everything he won, so he sent a message in response, asking to be contacted later. The girl was madly happy that Wei Wuduquan had replied to her, even though he asked her to write to him tomorrow. At this time, Wei Wo gathered all of his subordinates to go and destroy Zhang Kashi himself. The next day, he and his team had almost put together a costume, so they kept going. The hero marveled at the scenery in this game. They couldn't even guess what the next monster would come their way. But as they walked farther into the forest, the hero's attention was caught by a strange silhouette on the path. It turned out to be a bamboo python that was definitely a huge size. It was even bigger than the previous spiders. He called the other jackals from his team and said that they should try to defeat him. They stood there dumbfounded by such a monster. Still, they all started to deal damage to the monster together. The second of the team was wearing a poison suit whose poison resistance is 19. But this python is actually the same as a level 9 widow spider. Even after 10 minutes, they couldn't overpower the boss as there were too many pythons, proving once again that the game is trying to scare the hell out of players. It seemed that the battle had already dragged on and it was time to take action, so Wei Wo threw 80 potion bottles to his subordinates each. But after 2 hours the serpent was still alive. The players were already tired of doing battle with it. Wei Wo didn't know how to finish it off, and to gain strength he decided to pass out for a while and sleep. On the second day, the young man was well rested and put his helmet back on to enter the game with renewed vigor. But this time he had no desire to fight, so he doesn't know if he will be able to beat all the snakes. But when he returned to the game, he was very surprised by one detail. For some reason, his subordinates did not disappear from the game the moment he went out himself and continued to beat the snakes. During this time, the subordinates had raised their level and were already level 9 monsters. Wei Wo couldn't understand how this was even possible, as he hadn't encountered such oddities before. As it turned out, the 3 subordinates took turns resting and farming. Since Wei Wo was not with them, they shared their experiences among themselves, and thus improved their level. The young man had worried about raising the level of his subordinates before, but regardless of experience, their level would not increase. And if he were to divide the experience gained among them, he would get very little. Such a plan seemed brilliant to the guy. The pythons killed were enough to buy the subordinate's bloodline, although he was worth 200 points, which wasn't little, but their talent should be of high quality. He received the lowest snake bloodline. It was that after being poisoned by poison, when the target moves 1 step, the damage dealt will increase by 10%. The bonus lasts for 7 victim steps with a duration of a minute. Wei Wo wanted to improve the talent, but in that case his appearance would be changed again, but the damage would be increased by 10%. This poison was stronger than the spider poison, so he liked this arrangement better. When he did improve the talent, his appearance became much uglier than it was. Not only was his body now half spider-like, but he had also added a snake-like rear end. Even though his appearance wasn't very attractive, the fact that he was very strong calmed him down. He immediately started fighting the python to finally finish it off. Wei Wo hit it with his huge bat. As soon as he struck at it, the effects of the poison were immediately activated. One poison lasts for 5 seconds and the second lasts for 7 steps. He immediately called his subordinates to run this forest along and pass the difficult tests. Gaining their strength to the max, they swarmed at the python and each began to deal damage to it. And so, Wei Wo finally caught the long-awaited moment he had been working towards for so long. After destroying the python, he finally met the main boss in the forest of poison mist. It was a level 12 purple Elven Hill monster whose gear is probably very durable. The hero thought a bit about whether to fight it or not, but not thinking long, he still decided to fight. There were no mobs around the boss, and with the help of his subordinates there might be a chance of victory. He immediately ordered his guys to go on the attack. The monster at this time was waiting for its prey with a sly smile and was ready to destroy them with a single blow. In the next instant, a white object that looked like cloth was directed from the boss's mouth towards the guys. With this object, he encompassed the 3 subordinates and began to pull them in his direction. The boss turned out to be decent due to the presence of his rather challenging skills. At this moment, Wei Wo decided to take extreme measures as he realized that he was unlikely to come out victorious just like that. He realized that the 3 subordinates were not enough to overpower the boss, but they also needed to be freed, so the protagonist rushed towards the monster. He struck the monster first with his weapon, causing the damage to start dropping slightly, although it had damage almost like Wei Wo, but its health was over 4,000 and its body regeneration was so fast that it wasn't easy to destroy it. The hero continued to try to fight the boss using as much strength as possible. After a few more hits, the boss's speed was reduced by 10%, as well as its attack speed. This Elvenhill is a very strong boss, but if they switched to another team, they would die. Fortunately, Wei Wo improved the bloodline of the forest spiders that were fast enough. In such a battle, the hero needs to keep an eye on his health, talents, and skills. And also he will be helped by his subordinates, who are already ready to strike new blows. But as soon as his team approached the boss, she immediately reacted despite standing with her back to them. She reactivated her skills again and grabbed them, bandaging the guys. It turned out that she had no recharge skill, which meant that Wei Wo would only have to rely on himself. He decided to use the kite maneuver and leisurely destroy the boss. Half an hour later, he managed to straighten her out, and as a reward, he received 4 shards, 5 items each, and green and blue equipment. Such a reward was so valuable, so he was once again convinced that he had not wasted so much effort. The first item was the equipment attribute Even Hill Armor, which had 21 pieces of armor or magic armor and skills. If you sold this item, you could get a huge amount of money for it. Even if any of the players defeated Kaishi, it will take a huge amount of time to get to this place, but it's worth it, because you can earn a huge amount of money here. Half an hour later, the boss revived again, which was faster than the revival of Kaishi, who was probably a normal boss for players. The poison mist forest was needed to block players from entering the main city, so the revival rate of the local boss should be higher, so there was nothing left for Weiwo to do but to rejoin the battle. 10 hours later, the young man returned to his reality very tired, as he had collected 17 poison sets, 19 Even Hill armor, 11 headdresses, and shards after a long time of farming. He decided to see how other players are doing, who probably think he got tortured with this forest of poison mist and died, but luckily he managed to pass even the main boss. The young man was looking at various shopping options and came across a helmet of 11 units and good strength scores. Despite the fact that it cost 4,000 points, the boy still decided to purchase it to sell later for a good price. At this time, the players were discussing the poison mist forest and how to survive in it, as well as the young man's well-being. But no one mentions Even Hill, and it seems that none of the players reached level 3, they all passed level 1 and none gained access to the entrance to the forest, which was a good indicator towards the young man. His next step was to aim to cause a sensation. He wanted to create a sensation, for which he should advertise on Lindsay G's streamer, as it was the only fast way. Remembering about the girl, he decided to see how she was doing. Lindsay, at this time along with his team, were fighting the spiders. The spectators realized that even if the goddess couldn't break through any further, the other players would probably die immediately with the appearance of the spiders. Some teams said that the spiders had poison defense equipment, but Lindsay hadn't discovered this, and it was driving her crazy, as the poison mist forest was too hostile to a small team like hers. The viewers insisted that the goddess write to Weiwo Duquan and ask for the gear. The girl had no choice but to text him even if he deleted her from his friends. She was pretty sure that Weiwo had passed through the poison mist forest completely, since he hadn't sold anything for over a day. She asked if he had any poison-proof equipment to sell to her. The player immediately replied that he was. The girl was surprised that he was alive and had equipment. But when he wrote that he had the entire suit of equipment, Lindsay and her viewers were shocked by this information since no one else had the full suit. The girl immediately agreed to buy and asked to come to the sales floor or mail. They began to negotiate the number of suits, but the question about how many costumes she would buy made the heroine a little uneasy. The other players started aggressing towards the guy and saying it's a fake since there's no way he has many of those costumes. Lindsay G was racked with fear as she typed over the 3 sets of costume. Weiwo replied that each player has a personal account on the trading floor and asked the girl to go there. Thus, his answer was positive about the deal. The girl was insanely happy that she had finally managed to acquire as many as 3 poison-resistant suits. This was no problem for the young man. He sold her suits to the tune of 2,100. The girl happily began to try on her purchases. The realization that she would finally be able to defeat those spiders made her insanely happy. At the same time, Weiwo Duquan's mail started to receive messages asking him to sell the suits. Lindsay G's purchase turned out to be a great advertisement for the sale, but it was not clear to the young man why he was able to pass through the poison mist forest without a suit. He notified the other players about tonight's auction. He decided to farm some more and then put all the gear up for auction. That same evening, 20 minutes after the auction began, the girl asked for silence in the room. Weiwo was not used to such gatherings, but he was willing to be patient for the sake of money. The first item was a spider silk headdress, which was sold in 3 pieces, with a starting price of 2,000 yuan. But most players thought that Weiwo Duquan would only sell poison-resistant suits, and were willing to buy them for a high price. But surprisingly, there were other items. Once the girl counted to 3, declared the item sold for 9,800 yuan. The young man was glowing with joy and so much money. He realized that if they bought the helmet for that amount of money, the poison-resistant suits and Even Hill armor would go for even more money. The last batch of helmet was sold for about the same price as the first. When the host announced the next item, the buyers were shocked as they didn't realize how he got so much. It was like he was printing all this gear. The poison mist forest costume that everyone had been waiting for so long was announced next. It was sold in 3 sets, starting price 15,000 yuan. Everyone immediately rushed to make bids, and with each new word the price kept going up, as 3 sets at once is a great rarity. Everyone in the audience raised a fuss and everyone tried to buy this set for themselves, and so 3 sets at once were sold for 45,000 yuan. Weiwo was getting richer and richer with each new item. The first batch of costume sales was sold for 45,000 by buyer number 3. The next item was the second batch of suits from the Poison Mist Forest, which had a starting price of 15,000. The man who sat in the hall, immediately after announcing the goods, raised a sign with the sum of 45,000. It was again the third number who had bought the previous batch. The other guests started complaining that they also wanted to pick up the second batch, as they couldn't go any further into the Forest of Poison Mist without it. The next buyer decided to act and picked up a sign that read a price of 47,000. Other buyers immediately began to pick up after him, raising the price higher and higher. The last price for the suit was 50,000. It was man number 27, which was the owner of the second batch. The last batch amounted to 5 suits at once, and here some teams decided to fight for this batch to the end. Suddenly, someone in the audience held up a sign with a price of 90,000. The third batch was again bought by person number 27. The guys realized they had missed their chance to buy a batch of suits. Guys in despair began to leave the hall. Some said they knew from the beginning that they would not be able to get costumes. Some complained about how many rich people there are in this world. So far, the auction has been successful. The host also announced that after the snakes, the players are not waiting for the exit from the forest. On the contrary, there lies the most terrible challenge. Players were dumbfounded by this information since passing snakes already seemed impossible to them. In that case, the girl had another piece of equipment that could help players when breaking through the Forest of Poison Mist. The buyers started discussing the equipment they were unfamiliar with, and were shocked to find that Wei Wo Du Quan had even more powerful equipment. This equipment was the Even Hill armor, which was the highest blue class. The guests were eager to get their hands on such valuable equipment and give all the money for it, as the armor had the ability to reduce the victim's movement speed and attack speed by 10%. The girl started asking around for the price of this specimen. The host exhaled and began to speak in a calm voice so that everyone would follow her lead. The starting price was 15,000 for 3 sets in one batch. As soon as the people present heard about the number of armor in one batch, they started calling Wei Wo Du Quan invincible, as he had more than one batch of such valuable equipment. And so the batch was almost sold for 60,000 yuan. But at the very last moment, the price was changed. In the end, the batch was bought by a person 5,000 yuan more than the previous buyer offered. The last batch sold for 63,000. The young man finally took off his helmet and breathed a sigh of relief. The auction lasted for more than an hour, and he received a total of 450,000 yuan, a price that pleased the young man immensely. Also, his one arm began to fully function, and he could feel one leg intuitively, which was also a big breakthrough. He decided that he and his sister should buy a new apartment, but he needs to save up a little more money. He wondered if anyone would be able to break through the Forest of Poison Mist using the equipment he had bought. But he decided that it was no longer his business, and he needed to sleep now and still get valuable equipment later. At this time, the two teams decided to team up and jointly break through the Forest of Poisonous Fog. The boss of the sword group shouted to the guys that it was time to start the operation, and everyone immediately ran towards the forest, where a battle with poisonous spiders awaited them. They began to confidently fight the monsters, betraying as much strength as possible. Lin Ziji asked the team to keep fighting despite everyone being very tired. They had already managed to destroy Widow Alice, and it seems her gauntlet had fallen off. The next stage was the snakes. When the boys reached the kites, the girl also asked for no disturbance and ordered the teams up. It was almost 5 in the morning. Finally, the two teams had broken through the snakes and were on their way. They were the first to reach this place. Suddenly, their team stopped as they saw something strange ahead. It was the one Wei Wo Du Quan was talking about, the monster that was scarier than snakes. This monster turned out to be Even Hill, which was a level 12 boss and the lord of the Poison Mist Forest. The boys were sure that if Wei Wo Du Quan could defeat her, so could they. A young boy from their team volunteered to be the first to fight. As soon as he approached it to start the fight, the creature immediately attacked the guy using its abilities. The young man, as well as the other players, were sheathed along the entire body. When they realized that the monster had no cooldown, the guys immediately wondered how to fight it then. Some of the players could be sent back to the beginning of the game if they couldn't win, and after all, they had expended so much energy to get to the last monster. The next morning, Wei Wo Du Quan decided to re-enter the game. He called his subordinates and asked them to stop farming as they had to go to the city. When the young man entered the game, he realized that Effenhill's skills were not bad and were worth learning. Still, a brief volume on yellow-level combat was worth 1,000 reputation, which was not an expensive price. But when he decided to look at this item again, he found that the price had increased by 1,000 reputation, but despite that, he would still have to buy it. He opened the convolution in front of the monster. It was the skill of entangling in a web. Using this skill required mana to maintain a bound state. Wei Wo called his 3 subordinates after him, and they headed towards the city. After 10 minutes, they reached a signpost that pointed in 2 directions. One road led to the 100 Beast Mountains, while the other led to the main city of the 10th level. But with the status of hero, he couldn't go to the main city yet, so he decided to go to the mountains first. But once they walked a bit towards the mountains of the 100 Beasts, the hero was very surprised to see that it was the mountains that turned out to be incredibly large. They continued walking forward, and Wei Wo ordered his subordinates to look around, as monsters could be found here that would suit him as another subordinate. After a short time, they came across an extremely agile wolf monster. Next, they found an equally powerful high-damage tiger monster. The third monster was a tenacious bear. All three monsters were good, but hiring them as subordinates seemed boring and uninteresting to the hero, so they decided to come to the mass grave, which was in a creepy dark place. But it was even good, because in this case you could find something interesting here. No one cared about decapitated bodies anyway, and it was hard for a soul to sleep in a foreign land. When he reached for the grave, which was at level 20, he got a message that he had exceeded his level, so he no longer had rookie protection. At the same moment, the hand that was buried in the grave abruptly burst out from the ground. Following the hand, the entire female skeleton of a Banshee Styx monster that was at level 24 also appeared. When the protagonist saw her level, he was very surprised as he did not expect to see such a high level. The monster immediately ran towards Wei Wo Duquan with the skull in her hand. She started dealing damage to his subordinates thanks to her skull, and her speed was also very fast. This monster had high damage, and it also dealt multiple blows at once, just what Wei Wo needed. Throughout the cemetery, monsters began to emerge from their graves. The protagonist called his subordinates to rush forward with him to the monsters and start attacking them. The jackals accelerated out of their seats and rushed at the monsters. Fortunately, the monsters' damage had weakened, or else the subordinates wouldn't have survived. He asked them to stay in this place while he was going to go and pick someone up to try out the new skill of entangling them in a web. 2 minutes later, he had already activated his new skill. As it turns out, this skill is used from the hero's stomach, causing him to have to be in a silly pose. And 10 minutes later, he managed to overpower the Banshee Styx and make her his subordinate, and now her level is reduced to 11th as in Wei Wo. Thanks to his new subordinate's high damage, she could lower the armor of enemies, which was a great bonus. Now he needed to finish the order to recruit the Legion to 5 and hire another subordinate. After 15 minutes, his squad already had all 5 subordinates. Due to this, a hidden mission called Hideout was now open. This mission requires banishing the Monster Lord from the mountain of hundreds of beasts. As a prize for completing a mission, the player gets his own plot in these lands. Although it was good, but still the plot should be chosen a level higher, so that players cannot come to it for some time. He looked at the peak of Guanyun Mountain with the words that it was by far the highest point in the 100 Beast Mountains, which was a great place for his sight. Suddenly, a powerful beast appeared in front of Wei Wo and his team. One could tell that it was a sturdy monster from just one look. The damage of this Tiger Lord is high, but luckily he didn't bring any of the other monsters, so there will be more chances to defeat him. He called all of his numbered subordinates and asked them to stay away from this monster, and keep an eye on the circumstances, while he would start a fight with it at this time. The first to attack him was a tiger, but the hero managed to get away from the strong paws of the monster thanks to the fact that he had time to duck. The tiger was too fast for him. Also, the damage was high. Wei Wo's health might not be enough to handle it, so he called his team and ordered them all to attack together. The jackals obediently rushed to the aid of their master and began to fight diligently against him. With each new blow, the damage decreased and the tiger grew weaker and weaker. 40 minutes later, the monster was still alive. For destroying the Tiger Lord, the player would receive the usual rewards, so Wei Wo Duquan chose to banish the hairless Tiger Lord, so the task was successfully completed. Finally, they were able to chase the tiger away and exhale a sigh of relief. This stage was the completion of the Hideout mission, for which the player got his own plot and the title of Tough Nut. Now you need to clear the Guanyun Peak of Monsters and rename it to your own title. He decided to name his plot Die Hard, which was a title of bravery. Characters with this prefix gain an attribute bonus that increases base health by 20%. Despite Wei Wo being a monster, this game seemed very interesting to him. He called his squad to mop up the monsters, causing them to just pump up. He and his team quickly dealt with the monsters on the mountain and destroyed not a few tough ones, which was rewarded with a spiked mace. The protagonist finally got new items, and 2 of them at once. Wei Wo ordered the guys to work harder to try to upgrade everyone's equipment. Finally, the hero managed to reach the 12th level. With this event, he immediately popped up a notification from the system that with the achievement of a new level for the player, opens a secret realm in the single-player game, namely, the Gorge Yuyus. When he reached the right place, he found that the task was taking place in a dungeon. He told his subordinates to train outside with the monsters for now, but not to destroy too many, telling them to fight all together and rest if their health was less than 40%. In the secret realm, items corresponding to the player's needs will be dropped to the player. Before going there, it is necessary to pray. Once a prop appears, the first player to discover it will be rewarded with 5 times the normal reward. When Wei Wo inserts the weapon, the monster inside the realm drops it and hides it in his clothes. After thinking about it, the hero realized that it would be more advantageous from a point of view to use the materials rather than the choice of equipment. If the output equipment should not be below the quality of the set props, then Wei Wo would improve the materials to 4 stars. And lo and behold, he obtained a level 4 material. The young man assumed that if the monsters inside dropped level 4 materials 5 times, then he should make a lot of money. After completing the prayer, the entrance to the secret realm was revealed to him. This place was very huge. When the other players saw the system alerts that Wei Wo Duquan had reached the 12th level secret realm, they were in a state of shock, as the talk was that this title was very difficult to obtain. The protagonist was shocked that already the whole server knows that he entered the secret realm. Does this really mean that there will be a big battle soon? At this time, Yu Yue's silver wolves started running towards him. The young man immediately made the decision to obtain new materials no matter what, and rushed into the attack with the monsters. Fortunately, these silver wolves aren't very strong, so there's no need to deal with all 5 wolves. He had destroyed a level 12 special agile silver wolf Yue, and was rewarded with 540 experience points, 5 talent and attribute shards each, and 5 mana units. With each wolf destroyed, the young man grew richer and richer. After just an hour, he had already managed to level up and collected 1,000 materials, all of his talents upgraded to level 4. Looking at his profile, the protagonist discovered the addition of the prefix king to his name. However, he didn't know where to find the ancient fragments and the ancient heart in order to pump himself up. Now it's time to deal with the boss. The young man has over 200 damage, over 140 pieces of armor, and almost 5,000 XP, so he has nothing to fear in a boss battle. When he started to fight the powerful monster, he saw that it only had 6,000 health. This said that Wei Wo was stronger. And so the 15th level Yue Gorge boss was destroyed. The reward was 30 talent and attribute evolution fragments, 300,000 reputation. This time, he had earned a fortune. Players saw that the secret realm of the gorge had been cleared, and its closure would be done in 5 minutes. Some guys were even upset as they wanted to reach this level, and when the gorge will open more is unknown. Wei Wo decided that with so many materials, it was best to exchange them for reputation and improve the order to recruit the Legion to the next level. He went outside and told his subordinates to stop farming as they needed to go improve their strength. Half an hour later, Wei Wo's squad already had a lot of fighters. He ordered them to chop down trees and gather stones, as 500 trees and 500 stones were needed. After giving orders to his subordinates, the guy stepped out of the game into his reality. He chafed at the fact that he had managed to earn 500,000 yuan in less than a week. He had a feeling that it couldn't be. He was also able to lift one arm, which was already fully healthy, and his upper body was beginning to recover. The young man was madly happy that his upper body was already moving and very soon he would be a healthy man. He started to feel his hip. He might be able to walk soon, but first he would like to buy a house, which just cost 500,000 yuan. Although he didn't have money for a big house, but a small one would be enough. The young man opened his phone and read the information about the opening of a new small apartment complex. He decided to go there tomorrow and surprise his sister. At this time, China's National Security Agency was dealing with yet another problem. The head of the Special Operations Team, Ji Muhua, asked the agency director if it was true that their security agency had set up a special task force to participate in the game. Lin Hai replied that the game involves not only them, but also the governments and militaries of the whole world. It can change the future of humanity. He supposed that when they got to the next stage they might recognize some sort of clue. When Lin Hai asked his employee how he was doing in the game, the guy said that he was currently in the poisonous forest because the game was difficult. The supervisor gave him the advice to find Wei Wo Duquan. He would be able to help him. Judging by the information of specialized agencies, this is the only person who passed through the forest of poisonous fog completely. The next day, the young man was in the real estate office. The girl who worked in this department offered the guy her help in choosing a property. While the employee was telling him about the apartments according to his criteria, at that time, the guy was also noticed by the rest of the company, who recognized him as the most popular player. The girl reassured Wei Wo that he would not regret choosing their company. She offered a small apartment, which was currently the best-selling and the only one left. The guy still agreed to buy this apartment and give Lu Yi a little surprise, since he would have the opportunity to make more money anyway. Suddenly, their conversation was interrupted by a strange girl who asked the young man not to buy the apartment because there were some problems with it. A girl stood in the middle of the complex and started shouting to other people not to buy apartments in this Huangshan residential complex. She claimed that the buildings were of such poor quality that they would collapse. The buyers present began to talk about her words among themselves, and decided that it was better to believe this girl than to be convinced of her words by experience. The employee asked security to remove the stranger, calling her crazy. But the girl kept saying she had proof about what she was saying and was doing it to keep people from getting trapped. Wei Wodu-kwan also thought about her words, because when the payment is made, it is not easy to get the money back. So the young man decided not to buy an apartment in this place, regardless of whether the girl is telling the truth or not. The company's employees continued to insist that the buyers buy the apartments immediately. One of them strode forward and accidentally grazed Wei Wodu-kwan's shoulder. He immediately started telling the guy in an aggressive voice to move over and calling him abusive words. An employee of the company grabbed the girl who was dissuading her from buying apartments from them with all her might, by the hand, and told her that if she still had something to say, they should talk in private. The girl started screaming for him to let her go. At this time, the whole argument between the customers and the employees' people were filming on cameras, and even though the video is not out yet, but the number of views will be huge. The girl turned to those who were filming and asked them to stop doing it, arguing that she was doing it all for them. Wei Wo interjected into their conversation, rudely addressing the staff as they dared to bully the girl. After his words, the employee began to taunt him as the guy in the wheelchair decided to intercede and swung his leg at the young man, but luckily the man unexpectedly managed to grab his leg. The rest of the staff rushed at Wei Wo with sticks to beat him to the point where he couldn't take care of himself. But as soon as one of them approached the young man with a stick to start beating him, he was immediately hit back. Wei Wo immediately reacted to his swing and elbowed him in the face without expecting it himself. The next guy he managed to stop as well. When he was able to fight back quickly, he realized that for some reason, not only his strength had increased, but his reaction speed had increased as well. The worker grasped his stomach in pain and asked Wei Wo that he must be afraid they would tip over his wheelchair. After these words, he immediately began to shove the stroller with his whole body so as to overturn it and have the young man fall with it. But suddenly, someone put their hand on his stroller with the words that he had nothing to worry about, because now they were there for him. They were three guys, one of whom turned to the workers for daring to scare his master and said to attack since he was so brave. But Wei Wo couldn't understand anything from his words and why he was called master. The guys who stepped in for him started a fight with the protagonist's abusers. After a couple minutes, they were all lying beaten on the floor. One of them said that it was all Mr. Temo, who said to act stupid to confuse the enemy and win. The boy apologized to Mr. Kwan for scaring him and asked permission to deal with the rest of his abusers. The young man was a bit perplexed and assumed it was a stranger from the Nine Heavens game. Suddenly, someone entered the building where a fight was taking place between the two sides. It was an unknown man who had his two assistants with him. He looked rich and with pathos. As soon as he crossed the threshold and looked around, he immediately inquired about the man who dared to cause trouble in their company. His name tag said he was a manager named Juan. The young man who was on Wei Wo's side called someone on the phone and approached the person named Lao Zhao, asking if he knew anything about the construction company, and gave the name of the manager, who at this time stood right in front of him and scoffed. The guy turned off the phone and turned to Juan, saying he had less than 10 minutes. The manager at this time calmly lit a cigarette and then asked his men to chase the uninvited guests away. His deputies were champions at the sport, and were confident they could deal with this bunch of bullies in a minute. One of them immediately started attacking the guys, yelling that he hates it when someone makes themselves too important. But the young man was stronger than these two guys who were said to be champions. He immediately felled the guy who was trying to throw a punch at him. When the second guard ran at him, he hit him with his fist. The blow was so strong that the guy, despite his large muscle mass, could not resist. Manager Juan stood dumbfounded in the middle of the room as he didn't expect that his two stout guards could be felled by some one guy. The young man approached Juan and said with a threatening look that he had 1 minute to use other methods. Juan began to stammer and apologize for his wrongdoing, promised to compensate them for all the damages, and said it was better to quit already. But the young man did not want to feel sorry for him and let him go unpunished. And to prevent such a thing from happening, he gave him a strong blow in the stomach to make him answer for his actions. He looked at the powerless Juan that lay on the floor and said that apologizing and quitting was not the price for offending their boss, and reiterated that he would make every offender regret it for the rest of their lives. At this time, the people behind them were trying to find out where this handicapped person had come from, who was also establishing his own orders, saying that it was probably a check from the relatives, which was now over. The guy bowed before Wei Wodu-kwan with the words that 3 years had passed, and welcomed him into their family, saying that he should now lead them. Wei Wo was stunned, and at the same time certain that these people were up to something bad. He made a slightly dissatisfied look, and said that at first he wanted to be a calm and ordinary person, but now it all seems like a luxury to him. So he didn't have too high hopes. The guy said to himself that Wei Wo was showing off more than him. 3 minutes later, a squad of police entered the building, and loudly announced that this construction company was suspected of collusion between officials and businessmen. There were also problems with the quality of the real estate. They grabbed Juan and said that he as well as the top management were fired. Juan was led outside in handcuffs. He was upset at the time and regretted his actions, as he did not know that a disabled person could have such a horrible past. The policeman apologized to the boys for letting the culprits go unpunished for a long time. The young man thanked them for their work and told them to go back to the station, as he had an important conversation with Mr. Kwan. When the policeman came out, the young man suggested that the protagonist go to a more appropriate place to talk. Weiwo thought it was strange that this guy was constantly nodding and assumed that these people were very influential. They also looked like they wanted to ask him for something. The girl walked up to the guy and thanked him. Weiwo in turn thanked her for opening everyone's eyes to these people. The young man thanked the girl for helping their master and said that now they had to depart. After a while, Weiwo and the stranger were in a cafe talking about topics of interest to each other. They ordered drinks for comfort, and the first question from Weiwo was to find out who was in front of him, to which the young man replied that they couldn't tell that yet, but they needed help from a certain Weiwo Duquan player from the game. They were confident that the protagonist would help them find him, even though they had their own methods, but there wasn't a single vulnerability in the cyber defense of this game. Weiwo thought about his words and confirmed that it was indeed not easy to hack into the banking system. 500 of their players are stuck at the snake stage, so they need Wei's help. He handed the map to the guy and said that he could use it to choose any villa in the complex as a reward. But Wei couldn't afford to accept such a huge reward for such a small favor. But the young man continued to insist that the hero take the card. The guy still pushed the card away from him as he doesn't like to be in debt to anyone, and added that he will earn what he wants with his own hands. The stranger said that with this card, Wei could get a 30% discount on any property owned by Shansheng Company. Plus, they would provide complete security for him and his family. Wei still agreed, but he wondered why they were putting so much effort into it if it was just a game. The young man said that it wasn't just a game. The governments and the military were playing it, but they didn't know what was really hidden there. He told the young man to go to the forest at a certain time and promised to come and help them. But as soon as he said that, the young man was shocked when he realized that the greatest Wei Woduquan turned out to be him and asked why he was silent. Wei turned around on his wheelchair with the words that he was just waiting for the right moment. The 30% discount card pleased the protagonist, but much more important to him is to protect his sister's life and his. So it's really worth the cooperation. In the evening, at the very time the guys had agreed to meet in the game, a crowd of players gathered in the same clearing. One of the guys asked the boss if he was sure they could do it, since their equipment was too bad. The young man who agreed to cooperate with Wei was called Taishui Wei Guo. He replied that he was confident in his actions, and they couldn't buy better equipment anywhere else. He then ordered all the players to follow him and finally finish off about everyone they can. But suddenly the players abruptly slowed down on their way into the forest of poison mist. They saw something that shocked them and made them stare without taking their eyes off in wonder. In front of them, they saw the jackal that was Wei Wu Duquan. He had a smug smile on his face as he showed off his strong muscles. A short time later, the bodies of the jackals Wei had dealt with were already lying on the Zella. The players were shocked that he had single-handedly handled an entire pack, and were once again convinced that this guy was really too strong. Wei, on the other hand, stood beside the boss's body and said to himself that if it wasn't for his team, it would be very difficult to handle alone. 30 minutes later, the players came to him and saw that he had even gotten rid of Boss Evenhill. This forest of poison mist had ruined many teams, but this kind of work proved that the guy was incredibly strong. 2 days later, in the Mountain of Beasts, Wei destroyed the next monsters, for which he received 47 spiked maces, 53 wolfskin greaves, and the whole team reached the 14th level. For killing the 3-petal-colored monster, he received a strange equipment that looked ball-shaped and lit up with pink light. This was the first time he had seen such a thing. As it turned out, it was a monster skirt. This was the first time such equipment had fallen out after 2 days of continuous farming, which meant that the percentage of it falling out was too small. He decided to put this skirt up for auction and put the starting amount at 1,000. If no one bought it within 20 minutes, the young man was going to remove it from the auction. At the same time, Lindsay decided to see if there were any useful equipment at the auction, as their team had to go to the poison mist forest in an hour, and they might be able to use something. There she found an unusual piece of equipment, which is not in the column with the usual equipment, and it is available only to female characters. It increases the speed of movement by 5%, and there is a chance to confuse the enemy. When the girl tried on the skirt, she was delighted with its appearance. It also gave off a pleasant floral fragrance, and Lindsay decided that she would definitely buy it. When Lindsay looked at the system alert, she saw that there were many people bidding on that skirt, causing the item to be expensive. The girl returned to her reality and told her father for this unusual equipment, and her father did agree to help purchase it. Other girls also admired this skirt and went above and beyond the odds to get their hands on it. In the last 5 seconds of the auction, the price of the skirt was 65,300 yuan. And now the last second was the most intriguing as Lin Zi was about to find out just how many people had placed bets. In the end, the item was bought by Chun Lu for almost 1,000,000 yuan. Wei was very happy that he was able to sell the skirt for such a high price, and very soon he would be able to buy a new house. After entering back into the game, he decided to take the blood of the 3-petal flower monster. As soon as the young man was done with the ritual, his appearance changed again, and this time a small bundle of the future flower appeared on his head. With the appearance of this beam, his vision was improved, and he learned that there was a hidden area that normal vision could not see. He also detected the presence of a mist that has a low-level effect of clouding the mind, and it cannot be seen until it fuses with the blood of the 3-petaled flower monster. But from the feel of it, he felt like there was something else here. And then Wei found a signpost informing him that roads were getting lost, which meant this was a dangerous place. As soon as players saw the system alert that Wei Woduquan was entering the Lost Garden of Eden where the all-server mission begins, they immediately had a bad feeling because of the danger of the place. When the information about his whereabouts spread throughout the server, the players learned that Wei was at level 20. They decided to find their way to the Lost Garden of Eden to level up too, since they thought that going there would give them a level boost. The guys also received information that due to the activation of the server-wide mission, all the 10th level cities and Beast Mountain would be temporarily merged into one area, and all the players would be able to gather in 15 minutes. Lindsay's team approached the other players and offered to do this mission together. The guys immediately agreed as they were afraid that their alliance couldn't do it alone. Wei watched what was happening and was slightly surprised at how much noise he had made. Now, thanks to the monster's talent, he had perfect vision for a distance of 400 meters. But suddenly he saw the mutation monsters approaching towards him. Their numbers were large, and they looked quite strong as well. As soon as he saw them, he was a little scared at first as there were so many of them, and Wei knew it would be very difficult to deal with them. But then he remembered that he was the same wild monster with a mutation, and in that case he had a good chance to deal with them. In his squad he had 2 mutated elite jackals that were very strong. He also had a mutated elite banshee sticks on his team. Wei's attributes had doubled, damage 400, armor 130, and health over 10,000. This was the entire advantage of the savage monster. 15 minutes later, Wei decided to go to Lindsay's stream and see what was going on since there were a lot of players in the merged zone. The young man found himself in the main city of the 10th level called Storm City. Players suggested looking at Storm City after the merging of all zones since the current main city became even bigger than the newcomer village. In addition, for players whose level is higher than 10th, they removed protection. Now everyone is looking for the Lost Garden of Eden. For the same reason there are no team battles. Wei beckoned his entire troop to follow him. He was glad to be a wild monster, as it is not easy to be a player. It is expected that players will take some amount of time to find a way out to the Lost Garden of Eden. They need to hunt for new monsters. He and his team began to try hard to destroy all the monsters, and they succeeded very well. Wei was rewarded with a lot of good equipment. The young man only obtained these treasures from fusion mutations, and just thinking about what would fall out of the boss. And so the Silver Wolf Boss Hui was destroyed, rewarding him with a level 15 Silver Wolf Boss Claw. Aside from the critical strike and damage increase, it could be retracted and removed whenever you wanted, which was very handy. He decided to sell the big mace since he had a better weapon. When he opened the information about selling gear, he saw that the purchase prices had increased, and it was most likely because everyone needed more gear because of the server-wide unification, but this way, he could make more money. After 15 minutes, he and his team ran to farm, because in such a short time they earned 15,000. So now they need to earn as much money as possible mopping up monsters. At this time on the Beast Mountain, the players were discussing Wei's sale of the equipment that falls out of the Silver Wolf Yue. They knew that most of the entrances to Paradise Lost Garden were at this location and told everyone to be careful. Suddenly they saw a thick fog in the distance and thought there might be an entrance. The guys saw the information that Wei Woduquan had entered the southeast eye of the formation, causing the advancement of the fog to accelerate. But the players tried not to get upset and reassured themselves that it didn't mean he would win at all. The players confidently headed towards the fog, as they were sure that there was a lost Garden of Eden there. Wei in turn has discovered the southeast eye of the formation, but before he can reach it, he needs to destroy a stone pillar. He turned to his team and said, "We need to try to attack first." His subordinates immediately rushed out of their seats towards the stone pillar to destroy it. Immediately after their first attempt, the formation's eye protector rushed to attack them. It was the sole Golden Wolf Kadi that was at the 20th level. As soon as this monster struck the first blow, the subordinate immediately had half of his health blown away. Wei was shocked that this monster was incredibly strong and decided that he would strike first and his team should retreat. But even Wei's 500th attack couldn't break through the monster's armor, also affected by the monster's large amount of health, which was 100,000 units. However, judging from the monster's attack, its defense against magic was 0. The protagonist realized that this time he and his team would face a really tough battle, for which he needed to arm the team and then destroy it together. The first thing he did was to use the web he'd let loose from his belly. Such a move helped them confuse the monster and buy some time for his team to drink a potion to restore their health. But the monster still managed to get out of the web. While the other jackals tried to harm him, he hit one of his subordinates with his huge mace. But fortunately, he managed to put up a defense and withstand such a huge weight. After an hour, the monster's health was almost at 0. Wei asked his guys to attack more carefully so that they wouldn't make a mistake in hitting it. At this time, the players were ready to reach the entrance of the Lost Garden. During the attack with the Silver Wolves, they realized that these monsters were much stronger than normal, and the durability of the equipment was rapidly decreasing. But the most important thing was that their damage was weakened. During the battle, the wolves mutated and became even stronger, and as it turns out, the poisonous mist not only makes the monsters powerful, but also weakens the players. The guy from their team was saying that they needed to find a way out first, since a terrible thing could happen if they paid attention to the other, and the fog would spread to the main city. The news that Wei Woduquan had destroyed the southeast eye of the formation and won the title of best player sent the players into a state of shock as they doubted his victory. Wei and his team breathed in relief when they managed to destroy the table of the powerful monster. He knew that after so much effort expended, the rewards must be more than generous. Wei Wo pondered over whether to choose a haughty cub or a full-fledged wolf. As a result, he decided that the best option would be to take a haughty cub to house it in his territory and raise it, rather than taking a wolf for a limited time. In the end, he still decided to choose the second award, and get a baby Kadi. He lifted the little wolf high above him and decided to watch the properties first. As it turns out, this cub was only 1 damage, so it takes a lot of mana to grow. He put the cub on his shoulder and looked around you, but didn't see any players there, and assumed they were still killing monsters to get to the next level. At this time, the number 7 team continued the battle, while the number 3 team was retreating to replenish supplies and should soon return. The young man from the team warned the others that the spellmaster was casting an amplifier, so they needed to be careful. But fortunately, there weren't many silver wolves Yue Wei already left. And then, they received a notification that Wei Woduquan's player was entering the southern region of the formation's eye, and the fog was accelerating. The players were in a panic, as there was not much time left, and there were too few players in their team to catch anyone. Half an hour later, an entrance to a new level formed at the spot where the players were fighting. The players were discussing teleporting into the portal, and whether or not their plan would work. As the boys passed onward, Huang Chao's union discussed the affairs of the gathering. Boss W. Huang Chao talked to Feng Tian and talked about the successes of the game. Their conversation was interrupted by W. Huang's Bocha assistant. He announced the arrival of 70 people from Zai and Heng Xiao's teams, all of them destroying monsters. The guy said that there was no need to worry about the monsters as the fog was dissipating. Just as they were about to move on to search the formation, a new alert caught their attention that Wei had destroyed the southern eye of the formation, and now there were 6 more left to destroy. The boy was alarmed by this news. He told his team to look faster, as with this success they would be overtaken by Wei. The protagonist at this time had already chosen a reward, and now he had another mythical beast called the Vulture Vidfornir. The young man was sure that if he could raise one, he could raise 2, and the third even more so. Taking a look at his inventory, he found that he had gained a lot of equipment, but there weren't many healing potions left, and he couldn't deal with the boss without them. Suddenly he heard the voice of the other players who had managed to get to this place. They told each other to be careful not to attract the monster's attention. The visibility was too low for them, so they agreed to watch first and then take action. Suddenly, through the fog, they saw the appearance of some monster. They couldn't see the monster, but they could feel that it was incredibly strong. Wei smiled slightly with the words that Zhengzhou has no healing potions, so he needs to fight. With this phrase, he ordered his team to advance. His subordinates began to fight the players and were apparently much stronger than them. When one of the players saw a strange piece of equipment that was so strong that it took down a lot of health, he couldn't even guess what it was. He then ran forward shouting that at this rate his team would be destroyed, so he decided to take the hit. As soon as he wanted to strike one of his opponents, he was killed in the same second. None of the players found the strength to defeat this boss as he was too strong for them. 5 minutes later, the battle was over, and Wei was able to get his gear back. He also learned that those whose level was higher than level 10 had no rookie defense, which meant that as a wild monster, he needed to farm more. He ordered his crew to gear up as they were about to go into battle. To enter through the nearest entrance to the southwest eye of the formation, the hero was going to use the Son of Sacred Fire. In the southwest eye, the formation players were trying to defeat the main boss. Wei noticed that these guys were about 300 and well-trained in combat, and their boss had found a way to sneak in here. However, he wasn't going to worry about it, because he was sure that they would fight for a few more hours and lose. And while he was waiting for them to lose, at this time, he wanted to watch the official broadcast where Lindsay was explaining the situation of the Lost Paradise Garden. The girl was in the Western Formation at this time, and judging from the situation, killing the boss she was trying to deal with would stretch for a long time. She suggested looking at the other formations and found that the boss of the Southwest Formation was dying the fastest and would most likely be destroyed first. Then the boss of the Northwest Formation will be defeated. After that, she briefly talked about the Western Formation. Wei had received the official information and was going to massacre everyone in that order. After half an hour, he allowed his subordinates to rest before going to compete with the other players. Wei unleashed web skills on the player to confuse him and make him unable to fight back. The player, along with the rest of the guys from his team, looked scared as getting out of the web was not easy for them. When they saw his subordinates beside Wei, they were surprised to see more monsters with him since they thought he was the only one. The guys were too weak compared to the boss and realized that because of such strength, they were all about to be destroyed. While in battle, they also realized that the boss has the skills to summon other monsters as well. After 8 minutes, Wei fought the boss and still had no way to defeat him. But after another 5 minutes, he still managed to finish off the southwest eye of the formation. His new gear can use Hilkis and can also take down the boss. Players tried to deal with the monster and chimed in with words about working harder, and also said that the skills of this boss are at a high level so it can suck out mana. The other boss, which was Wei, could absorb mana and turn it into health. An hour later, the protagonist was rewarded with another small animal. He had managed to destroy another eye of the formation, and now there was one more to deal with. He managed to collect all 4 cubs of the beast village. The next mission, called Lost Garden of Eden, was unique and time-limited. The mission description said that you had to catch any combination of 4 ancient beasts to start the mission. The young man wanted to choose someone stronger, and from the list of animals he chose the black dragon Nidhega. In the next instant, there were 2 small beasts on 2 pillars facing each other, which Wei won. He looked up a little in thought and tried to figure out why this had happened. And now he realized that this was not the prayer of the secret realm, and apparently if he placed them on the pillars, they would not return. The little wolf started screaming at the top of his voice while standing on a pole. At the same instant, 2 huge wolves appeared behind the small animals, doing the same thing as the small ones. Wei was dumbfounded by the appearance of so many animals as he didn't want to get rid of them all. The next instant, the shape of a huge monster appeared in front of the protagonist's face. The young man wondered how he could induce this thing. Quickly looking around, he decided that these 4 huge monsters could help him. The Hathi Wolf is good at combinations, the Widfernir can split, and the Hellhound can absorb mana. All of these qualities can be useful when combined with Chimera skills. After briefly thinking about it, he allowed the monsters to advance in hopes that they would actually help him. His entire team stood in front of the huge boss who looked incredibly strong. Before the fight could begin, the boss let out a burst of fire from his mouth and thus knocked Wei's squad out of the way. And then the protagonist realized that he was using a magic attack that destroyed 20,000 damage in one hit. And if it wasn't for the 4 ferocious beasts, they would definitely die. He asked his previous subordinates to retreat and take cover in a safe place, as they were unlikely to last long in battle. After which, he let loose a web on the monster. The web skill acted instantly, and it could encircle in a second. At first he thought that this skill was useless, but he didn't expect such a great result. He ordered the Hellhound to suck mana and the Chimera to use the dizziness skill. His team began to do as he ordered, and the monster urn though was decreasing but very slowly. As it turned out, he had 500,000 health, so this way they would take too long to fight him and waste a lot of energy. After an hour of the northeast eye of the formation, the players were trying to beat their opponents. The girl turned to Huang Sha saying that there was something wrong with the people on Huang Chao's team. They were deliberately trying to separate Shiru from them, and most likely Huang Chao's boss wanted to break the contract. The guy raised his weapon upwards and shouted that if everyone came closer to the pillar, the people from Huang Chao would play a cruel trick. The guy with a threatening look said that although everyone was on Zhan Shan's side, it didn't mean that the evil beast didn't belong to their team. Player boss Huang Chao managed to destroy the eastern eye of the formation, and now he has 2 more to do the same. The rest of the players received alerts that the promised mission had been completed. The guys still had a chance to destroy the beast, while the hidden mission was still pending. The players in front of them have begun to activate the gear and are about to have a new pass open to them. Someone was in despair at never being able to catch a single beast, while Wei Wo Duquan had 5 pieces left to find. Suddenly, a second team started running to meet them, who demanded the pet back and said that Ping had secretly stolen the transfer of the second award. Huang Chao immediately tensed up since the status couldn't be turned off because then the pet would explode. Wei Wo at this time was very close to destroying the main boss. His team was doing a great job against the boss and was able to bring him close to defeat. At the entrance to the Lost Garden of Eden, there was utter devastation. The teams of players were fighting amongst themselves, causing many injuries. The guy asked his companion in a worried voice about the fact that didn't he know that their Huang Chao guys had robbed Zhansheng Shui Wu. The guys who weren't aware of the reason for such a massacre didn't understand why there was a fight and decided that they needed to help Shang Shu's team. They immediately jumped into the fray because they were angry that the system was silent about the robbery, but kept putting out ads. The guys were filled with a desire for revenge against Shang Shu's team and were willing to stand up for him at any cost. At this time, Wei had successfully completed the mission called Absolute Beast. He also got a new mission called Blood Demon. To complete the new mission, he needs to collect 4 baby beasts, after which he needs to collect the older baby beasts. When the young man read the assignments, he was in complete shock as the mission was almost impossible. Suddenly, he received a notification that the mission called Lost Garden of Eden has been completed, and the hero will be teleported to the entrance of the garden. When Wei teleported to a certain place, his facial expression was shocked as there was a fight between the players in front of him. There were 1,000 people fighting in front of him, but the hero couldn't even guess what caused such a commotion. When players saw it, they immediately thought it was another boss with a long name they can barely read. But suddenly, Wei's appearance disappeared, and only a shadow remained behind him, which quickly dissipated. He decided to run away from this place as soon as possible, as the feeling of being beaten up by so many people is just horrible. The young man returned to his team of subordinates and told them it was time for them to go home, and they needed to do it quickly. Suddenly he heard the words of the players saying that Boss Huang Chao could not escape, and would be held accountable for what he had done. As it turned out, there were 2 guys fighting behind the bushes, and each was trying to come out the winner. Wei got angry at them for choosing the wrong place since they don't know that the area belongs to him, and decided that in that case he needed to deal with them. Huang Chao shouted to his opponent that he wouldn't leave this place alive. At this time, a girl ran at one of them, swinging her bat, but they didn't know yet that Wei's subordinates were moving towards them. The jackals started suddenly for the guys to beat them up, and thus they all got what they deserved. After the fight, the guy mused that he had gotten his hands on the main thing that had caused such a stir. Wei in turn looked at his sphere that contained the beast. He realized why the system had to declare the one who destroyed the eyes of the formation every time, because that was the way to snatch someone. He turned to his subordinates and beckoned them to move on as he had hopes that he too would be able to snatch someone. As it turned out, the players didn't pick up the last monster. They were fighting amongst themselves at this time, and one of the teams got to the point where their opponent didn't have much health anymore, and they almost overpowered them. But suddenly Wei Wo burst into their fight. None of the guys expected to see another strong boss here. After a couple minutes, the protagonist managed to straighten out all the players, thanks to which he collected the last beast cub and finished passing the Absolute Beast mission. The next mission should be over in 5 minutes. The young man needs to choose one of the cubs and send it to the beasts in the formation so that he can defeat the remaining ones. After 2 hours, Wei decided to put all of his gear on the trading floor and disconnect from the game to go rest, as he was very tired during this time. Finally, the guy took off his helmet for the game and returned to his reality. He managed to sell the gear, and now he has about $1 million in savings, so very soon he will be able to surprise his sister. But when he picked up his cell phone, to his surprise he saw 16 missed calls from his sister and already thought something had happened to her. He dialed Lu Yi saying he was asleep, and that's why he hadn't heard from her. The girl began to tell him that it wasn't just a game. Her team was being targeted by the Huang Chao boys, and every time they went into the forest, they would fish them out and attack them. After half an hour of conversation, the girl thanked her brother for the time spent, as she always felt better after talking to him. They tipped a few more phrases and sent each other to bed. Wei, on the other hand, regarded the current situation with apprehension. He knew that it would be useless to confess to Lu Yi and decided that it was better not to say anything to her for now. But if Huang Chao dared to offend her, he was ready to make them pay for it. Finally, the young man was able to get up from his wheelchair as his right leg had almost recovered. Wei was overjoyed that he would soon be a normal person. He was currently at level 14, and judging from his progress, he would be able to fully recover in about 3 more levels. He was getting more and more curious about the 9 Heaven game, because it was almost magical, and not at all like the one on Earth. He brought his team 10 cubs and gave orders to improve these cubs, and in the meantime was going for a walk. The young man started looking for people from Huangchao, but the wilderness area was so vast that it wasn't easy to do so he decided to ask someone for help. Wei contacted Iron Patriotism and asked for help. They agreed and promised to ask their people to pay attention to this team, and in return they asked to sell the gear. 5 minutes later, he was already fighting the players for whom he was the boss, that he suddenly appeared and attacked the guys. After a while, he was resting from the battle and thinking about how to help his sister. He realized that in order to do that, he would have to become a support for her, and to do that, he would have to take on human form. The main condition for getting a skin on the trading floor is to destroy more than 1,000 monsters of the same type. But after all, players are also a kind of monsters. At this point, the progress of getting the skin was 439, and then the protagonist remembered that he just might be able to help his sister and gain the right amount. He immediately started destroying players, which increased the number of victims each time. After 10 hours, he was able to handle all of them, but the battle with the human players was not easy for him. He decided to see how his sister was doing. When the guy got out of the game, he dialed Lu Yi to see how she was doing. The girl immediately started complaining that those guys were following her again. Wei asked his sister not to get so angry and offered his help. First, he needs the girl's ID and said he knew a specialist who would help her. The girl asked him a little incredulously how he knew him, and Wei said that he could be trusted and that he was an amazing man. Lu Yi still agreed to accept his help and dictated her information. After the conversation, he sent his little sister to bed and told her that she could well rely on him and be calm. 2 days later, the young man decided to add his sister as a friend, but he did it anonymously, so she wouldn't guess that Wei Wuduquan was him. He introduced himself as her brother's friend. The girl told her problem with Huang Chao's team. The guy realized that the neutral zone was full of people, and if he went there, it would cause huge problems. After chatting with Lu Yi some more, he said that he would soon come to the right place that the girl had told him about. Before this, Wei hadn't even realized that the last few dozen people would be right outside his door. At this time, a team of players were trying to deal with the boss, and it seems that the monster is quite soon to be defeated despite continuing to fight. Suddenly, their attention was caught by the appearance of a boss from the Lost Garden of Eden. They immediately tried to tackle him, but the guys didn't have good enough skills to even catch Wei on the spot. Wei stopped in front of one of the players, who with terror in his eyes tried to crawl away from him since he saw that this boss had poison. The very next moment, the guy was already lying idly on the floor. The protagonist looked at him with the words that it was a pity that he only got a healing potion and no equipment. Suddenly, he received a new message. And as it turned out, it was a published video of a little girl. Wei was very curious to see what she looked like in the game. Lu Yi turned to the anonymous man who was Wei, and said that the enemies had apparently left, and if so, they could complete the mission and not bother him anymore. But suddenly a rope was wrapped around her legs, and the girl realized that it turned out to be a trap. A girl from the opposing team was approaching in her direction. She laughed loudly at Lu Yi, and said that she had to kneel down and beg for her to call her to fulfill the mission. After that, she hit Lu Yi's back with a rubber cable with all her might and said, why did her little brother rush to help her? Because she loves him the most. When Wei saw how they treated his sister, he was overcome with aggression and was ready to destroy Huang Chao's team right now. Finally, Wei was able to perform a transformation of his appearance in the game. The appearance generation happened quickly enough, and after a couple seconds he no longer looked like a monster. He had the same appearance as in real life. The young man was very happy that he now looked like a normal person. He got the idea in his head to hide his name. Now he's practically a wolf in sheep's clothing. Lu Yi texted him that she was tired and would log out first. This kind of thing the guy didn't really like. But anyway, he would go to the main city of the 10th level for now to see how things were going. When the girl took off her helmet to log in, she was very angry about the command that keeps her from completing the mission. Next to the girl sat her friend, who reassured her that the boss and the others would soon come back and help her get revenge. Lu Yi was surprised that the boss could really say such a thing. But the girl exhaled heavily as she realized that this was her personal dislike for Xiaowu. And if her team joined, it would already be a team dislike gone because of what she feared it would affect the others. The girl replied that it shouldn't affect them either since the Imperial Guild is large. At this time, Wei looked bewilderedly at the small-sized monster running towards him, which was level 11 and was called a ghostly beauty. He looked around at the 11th level monsters, which he thought looked quite original. The young man was confident that he could defeat them with a single blow. Suddenly, a girl from the team asked the guy if he was alone here, after which she promised to save him from the monster, and they as a team rushed to fight it. Wei found out that this is the pretty girl who helped him that day with the naval realtors. This girl also plays Empyrean, and her name is Hualuo Zhexian. The girls talked amongst themselves about the shoulder pads falling out of the monster, and one of them sold them. Hell, the money offered to split amongst themselves. The girl turned to Wei and asked why it was he who was wandering the forest by himself, to which the young man replied that he was a lone wolf and not a member of the guild. He told the boys that others destroy one man in 10 steps, and they kneel before one man in 10 steps, then asked them if they were being too hard on themselves. The girl started laughing a little from her partner and told him that he wanted others to kneel in front of him, But in reality, it turned out to be the opposite. The guy smiled awkwardly and asked not to remember that. The guys headed to the main town, and on the way they asked each other about their journey. The guys told them that they were not part of the guild. They had paid someone to guide them through the forest of poison mist. 10 minutes later, they were already in the main city, where the streets were filled with crowds of people. Hualuo answered the guy that he had just arrived and hadn't seen what had happened here before the servers were separated. She said that there were always tons of people in the main town, and even more than in the pledge area. Wei looked up and saw a strange screen. The young man from the team told him that it was the ranking of the Twin Towers. Here were the strongest of the strongest. All who came in and out of the city admired them. The guys started cheering for the first-place winner Qingyi Taoge, who was a professional fighter with incredible reaction speed. Wei remembered what the forum had said about big shots and guilds competing to get on the list. His thoughtful state was interrupted by his partner. He said that you cannot even think about this man, because they still have to grow up to him. The young man tipped a few more phrases to lighten the mood and finally added that he should just enjoy the spectacle. Suddenly, Hualuo approached Wei and said in a quiet voice that he was probably not who he said he was because he had hidden his data. The guy immediately got nervous and said he wasn't hiding anything, but the girl realized it from his outfit. They were interrupted by a girl and told to stop being sick as they needed to go buy medicine. Lengnua's sister suggested to create her guild. The girl started questioning is she really ready to quit acting and create a guild in the game? She must have become addicted to the game. Wei looked at Lengnua with a cute smile with thoughts that he didn't even expect her to become an actress. But after all, it's not surprising since she's very beautiful. There were many people in the street of the city, and each one was busy with his own business and his own thoughts. And so the boys came even closer to the Twin Towers, Wei gazing wistfully at the building. Since he didn't have a guild, he decided to start with the singles in Divine Punishment Tower. But while he was deep in his thoughts, he didn't notice the guy in front of him and crashed into him with his shoulder. The stranger looked quite strong. He started shouting at him with aggression, while his comrades supported his words. As it turned out, it was Qingyi's boss and his subordinates. One of these guys turned to the protagonist and said with a threatening look that if he saw them, he should immediately avoid them. He heard people talking about how the three masters were once again going to challenge the Divine Punishment Tower. They were discussing whether this team could pass one of the difficult levels, which was the 4th floor of the tower. Since Lu Yi was offline, Wei decided to play around and just see how far he could get. And then people started discussing that this strange guy seemed to want to challenge the Tower of Divine Punishment too, even though he had just come to the city. They also wondered why he was going along with Taoge and the others. The other players started mocking the guys and claimed that he was afraid because he had hidden his data. They were also sure that he wouldn't last 20 seconds. But in spite of all the taunts, he came to the entrance and said he was challenging the Tower of Divine Punishment. The girl bowed and accepted his wish for fulfillment. People started discussing Wei's entrance into the portal, some saying that they shouldn't pay attention to him, and it was better to switch to the 3 strongest who should improve their results. The guys were shocked that their new acquaintance went there, and decided that since it was the first time he had come here, he didn't know anything. The guy laughed a little and said that he should display Wei's data with the results of the 3 players on the screen. Then the whole nation would laugh at him. The screen showed 3 players preparing to enter the portal, but only the 4th participant could not be seen by the guys as his data was hidden. The young man didn't understand why they were even posting this footage as it seemed awkward. But the girl asked them to calm down and just concentrate on watching the 3 leaders and studying their technique. The first guy started confidently fighting the monster. He was confident in his abilities, and that this time he would definitely manage to break the record. The stranger had been in the portal for 15 seconds, which was not a bad result. The girl suggested to find him and form a team together, because apparently this guy had some skills. 2 minutes later, the people were shocked that the newcomer had managed to stay there for so long, and it seemed they had underestimated him. Some argued that this guy must have studied the tower, while others were sure that there was some kind of mistake. In 3 minutes, the first level should be over by now, but somehow the stranger's time continues to grow. One of the leaders was looking at the screen, where there was information that Wei had already been chosen, but he wasn't moving to the next level for some reason. At this time, Wei was able to destroy a level 10 silver wolf, for which he received 100 bronze coins, after which he was able to deal with 2 more wolves. The guy was very happy that he was given 100 coins for each wolf, as he had not had a penny in his pocket before, and this was a great opportunity to earn money. The system message stated that if a player arrived on the 1st floor of the tower for more than 4 minutes, they would be forced to go up to the next, 2nd floor. Soon he managed to go to the next floor, where the shadow cat monster that was on the 11th level was waiting for him. For killing this monster, the guy had already received 200 silver coins. Such a reward pleased Wei more and more. After 4 minutes of combat, he received a message that If he arrived on the second floor of the tower for more than 4 minutes, he would be forced to go up to the third floor already. On the third floor, he managed to get almost 40 silver coins. The hero made sure that this place is just a paradise for the forum of money. People were puzzled when they saw that this guy was already on the third floor since they thought he was a rookie, but he managed to get this far. Guai's new acquaintances couldn't even believe it was really the stranger who had entered the portal because he was too strong. They were curious how long he could last on the third floor. While the young man was a level above, one of the 3 leaders was able to last 2.5 seconds in the tower. The second leader managed to last 4 seconds longer than the previous leader before losing the race. The third had already been a full 3 minutes. There seemed to be some problem with the system, but he should take a break, or he'd use up all his energy and wouldn't be able to get to the 4th floor. And lo and behold, he'd almost managed to stay on the 3rd floor for over 4 minutes and was about to be carried to the next floor. But it seems like the monsters on this floor were too strong and he won't be able to stay here for long, but it's a good result anyway. Tao went outside and the people began to marvel at the fact that he was able to last 48 seconds on the 4th floor, which was a great result. One of the guys told Tao that he was the first to be able to climb up to the 4th floor, but the guy wondered why Yuming, Guju, and Luntag still hadn't said anything to him, which was very strange. When he turned to the boys, he saw them staring at one point with fixed gazes. As it turned out, that stranger was still in the tower, despite the fact that even all 3 leaders had already left the game. Tai turned his head to the screen and saw that there were still people on the 4th floor, and that person had been holding on to the 4th floor for almost a full minute now. On the screen was the information that the anonymous player had already lasted over a minute on the 4th floor and held the title of record holder. Wei stood beside the lifeless bodies of the sidewalk and rejoiced that he had already received 400 coins as a reward. He had a total of 150 silver coins. He received a notification that if he could stay on the 1st floor of the tower for a certain amount of time, he could move to the next floor. The guys looked at the screen and couldn't believe that the stranger had managed to reach such a level, because at first they thought that he would be defeated by a level 11 Wolf Yue. People were shocked when they saw that the anonymous player had moved to the 5th floor, which was completely overwhelmed by monsters. They demanded to bring the battle to the screen. They kept saying that this guy can't be that strong since he's just a rookie. Someone started to speculate that it was Wei Duquan, but people immediately said that it couldn't be him since Wei was on the streamer. At that moment, the spectators were telling Wei that he could very well throw a challenge to Juxian Tower, as they were sure that he would reach the 5th floor. But Wei didn't want people to know who was actually going through the floors in the tower, so he made a surprised look and wrote that someone had actually managed to get to the 5th floor. The young man did this in order not to reveal his identity, as he did not want people to know the truth. He wouldn't be able to traverse many floors, so he figured 5 would be enough. On the 5th floor, he lasted 2 minutes and 19 seconds and ended up earning 200 silver coins. The guy walked out of the tower with a calm look, but the players didn't take their surprised looks away from him. As it turned out, there were a lot of people waiting for him on the way out, watching his time. One guy in the crowd told the stranger that he was good for making it to the 5th floor. Wei pretended that he didn't know which floor he had reached. The guy started asking him to teach him how to fight as well. VJJ in turn smiled awkwardly and said to just run. Suddenly, Tai jumped into their conversation and started yelling that it was impossible to reach the 5th floor just by running, and the guy's equipment wasn't that powerful, so he was definitely hiding something. The others supported Tai's words and demanded to know how he did it. Some accused him of cheating and said it was just a mistake. Wei replied that although he didn't have to answer all their questions, he would definitely say one thing. He walked over to Tai and quietly told him to stop yelling, as this area was not theirs now. As he walked on, he left everyone present puzzled. No one understood what he meant. None of the players in the world have ever been on the 5th floor except this guy, whose personality is definitely not as simple as he shows. The people present couldn't understand how this guy could repeat himself by talking to him like that and asked if he was Wei Duquan. At the entrance, the tower worker asked the stranger to register his team. Wei was surprised to hear that he didn't want to do that because he had come to collect his reward. Suddenly, however, he did consider starting his own team, but he would need a minimum of 4 people to do so. He looked at his new acquaintances and remembered that on the way here they had talked about how much they wanted to start their own team. The young man then approached them and told them of his plans to start a team to get a reward and asked if they would do him a favor, and told them that if they wanted to move to another team, they could do so without a problem. The girl replied that they couldn't help with that, but the guy said he would go to the Tower of Demon Patrons and alone, just wanted to help them and promised to buy them some more equipment. The girl still agreed to help him, but only without the gear. She asked all the guys to go to the registration office, which was not far away. The worker at the check-in said you had to pay 50 silver coins to do so. The girl from the team was unhappy about having to pay such a huge amount of money. After all, They had just passed through the poison mist forest, and how could they have so much money? Wei, on the other hand, said that he had money, so it was fine. The protagonist thanked the guys for agreeing to help him, and a new Wild Wave team was created. Suddenly, the girl said it was time to head to the Tower of Monster Conquerors. The guys decided to go along with the young man even though they were weaker, but still wanted to help him in some way. Wei thanked them but refused their help. The protagonist looked around and was a little surprised that there were so many spectators. Didn't they all have anything better to do? After which he entered the Monster Conqueror's tower alone, causing another commotion to be created. The screen popped up with the information that the Wild Wave team was on the first floor. There is a boss in the Moyu Tower, and the guys wondered if the stranger would be able to climb to the second floor, because judging by his demeanor, he would definitely be able to handle it. His whole team believed it. 4 minutes later, Wei was already on the second floor. Some people were indignant about it because the guy had gone there alone and no one knew how he managed to do it. At this time, the other players were watching and were surprised that someone was able to break Qin Tao Gei's record. Lu Yi was with her team and listened to their opinions on the matter. The girl said that the situation was getting out of hand, and she began to suspect that it might be Wei Wo Duquan. The partner said that this anonymous player must be Wei Wo, but Lu Yi rejected these thoughts since when the anonymous player conquered the tower, Wei was on a live broadcast at the time. She kept thinking about who it could be. Suddenly, the boss of their team came into their room and offered Lu Yi to play, since they helped her complete the mission, and Xiao Wu Lan was too suspicious. Following the boss, 3 other guys came in who were aggressive about the situation. They wanted to see the whole situation from behind the scenes. The partner smiled sweetly and thanked the guys for their help. The protagonist continued to fight successfully against the monsters. He was fighting deftly in the tower at this time. The battle was as easy as ever, and he handled everything perfectly. He managed to make it to the 3rd floor, which he felt wasn't that difficult and was about to get more awards. The boys watched the fight with a dumbfounded look. Now this anonymous player was their idol. Wei's team realized that their team was the strongest. Soon the young man came out of the tower and immediately shouts of admiration could be heard in his direction. The girl offered the stranger to go to the station of the team, but the young man refused as he did not want to really join the team because he did not have the strength for it. He was about to leave when he heard a girl's voice asking if he would come again so that they could level up together, to which Wei replied that if fate so decreed, they would meet then. After he left, the audience was still discussing his exit to the 3rd floor, where he lasted 2 minutes and 4 seconds. Everyone was sure that something was about to change. The guy from the Wild Wave team was proud to be a member and even an alternate on that team. Everything going on just seemed unrealistic to the guys since there were only 4 people on the team. But Hualuo immediately blurted out that this was a great opportunity for them. Lengnuo asked what she was talking about, and the girl explained that their team name was hanging on the big screen at the gates of the city. Thanks to that they would be able to promote themselves well. The girl was a little apprehensive about it, but Hualu thought it was quite a good idea since they weren't bringing harm to anyone, and anyone who wanted to could join them. The girls asked the young man to ask the stranger if he was okay with such an undertaking. At this time, Wei was pondering over the fact that his skin now looked like it did in real life, so Lu Yi would recognize him, because of which he decided it would be better to buy a mask, as his thoughts were suddenly interrupted by the shout of a young man from his team. He said they want to develop their team on their own. Wei didn't even really listen to him, so he said they can do what they want. The young man was greatly relieved at his permission, and a slight smile appeared on Wei's face. The protagonist bought himself a red mask, and at that moment wondered what his sister was doing now. Lu Yi, in turn, was at the game with her team and preparing to do battle with her enemies. The team boss shouted that one must first understand the enemy before finishing him off and asked the girl to move out of the way. A sly smile appeared on the girl's face in response after the guys said they didn't want conflict. The guy was very angry with her. He asked her not to deceive people, as his people did not provoke her to the conflict at all. He said it was her own fault. The girl replied that she was very upset when she saw Lu Yi's appearance and name, so she wanted to beat her up, and the guy in turn bit her. After saying that, the young man couldn't stand it and ordered his team to attack her. Their enemy began to run away with a sly smile on her face. Suddenly, Huang Chao and his team entered this territory and questioned who Temo was, probably the daredevil who dared to attack his woman. At the sight of the boss, Lu Yi started to feel a little nervous as she didn't know what to do next, but Jian Tian told them to leave it to him. He introduced himself as the captain of the team of the same name and said that there are always misunderstandings during the game, and he believes there is no need to escalate the conflict. But at his words, Huang Chao said that he must want to make him want to fight them, and called their team a complete nonsense. Jian Tian started to shout that he had gone too far, but the boss only said that they wouldn't be able to handle him. When the young man asked what he wanted from them, Huang Chao turned to Wu Lan and asked her what she wanted. The girl replied that she wanted them all to kneel down and apologize to her, calling her mistress. Then she promised to spare them. The team immediately said there was no way they would kneel before her. After which, Huang Chao stepped forward with words that would allow them to learn something about him. With these words, he attacked Zhan Tian and started fighting. In the next instant, both teams entered the fray and began fighting each other. Lu Yi shouted to her boss that this guy was too strong and would easily straighten out their team. She said they needed to get out right away and leave them alone, but the boss wasn't going to do that, reasoning that they were a team, and if they decided to fight, then that's what they would do. Then a whirlwind swirled around and commands that was caused artificially by Huang Chao. He started laughing with their team and saying that they suddenly became cohesive, after which called their team trash. The guy turned to Lu Yi, calling her a walking disaster since all her friends are about to die because of her. He said he would give her one chance to make things right, and if she kneels down and asks Wu Lan for forgiveness, then he would let them go. But the girl wasn't going to do that. She gripped the sword firmly in her hand with words that he could only dream of. Suddenly, Huang Chao swung his bat at her with a shout that he would not wait, but fortunately, Lu Yi had time to put her sword on defense, which saved her from being hit. After a while at the Spavan site, the members of the eponymous team were sitting and relaxing after such a commotion. Lu Yi was a little worried. She asked Ru where their manager was. The girl replied that he went to their manager, hoping that he would think of something and sort it out. She opened the system screen because someone had sent her a message and she needs to respond to it. As it turned out, she was written to by an anonymous person who promised that he would soon come to her, despite the fact that the girl said that they could handle their team and did not need his help. She was a little surprised by the anonymous's behavior. She replied to him that Huang Chao's main force was here, and their boss, who was guarding the NPCS siren, and if one came here, it would self-destruct. But the anonymous claimed that everyone would stay alive and not to worry so much. So their manager came in with the information that the manager didn't want to provoke Huang Chao. Although the girl was upset, she found the strength to smile and told the guy that she herself was embarrassed to cause so much trouble for everyone. Juju asked what she would do with her mission, but Lu Yi said that she had to farm monsters first. She couldn't even believe that they would be with this NPCS for life. When she got a text from an anonymous tip that he had arrived on the scene, she said goodbye to the guys and told them not to worry about her. Following the girl, her team shouted that this Xiao Yi was very pathetic and Wu Lan was very nasty. The guys were upset that they couldn't defeat those guys. At this time, at the place where Huang Chao's team was, Wei had already arrived in his mask so his sister wouldn't recognize him. When the team boss saw the strange guy he called trash, said he wasn't in the mood to deal with anyone right now. But Wei only asked if it was him who was bullying Lu Yi. The guy was very surprised that he really wanted to avenge this girl. Wu Lan assumed that this was the same brother that the girl loved so much. The protagonist replied that it was him, but it was too late to apologize and the conflict needed to be resolved in another way. Huang Chao's team started laughing loudly at his words about them having to apologize to her. Suddenly Wei heard Lu Yi's voice running to him and asking him to leave these guys alone as she was fine. But the guy said she had nothing to worry about since they were just a bunch of stupid people. He promised the girl he would take care of her. Huang Chao laughed at him because of the fact that he seems to be against him. He also said that he seemed to be the same Wei Wo Duquan. Wu Lan added that this was the first time she had seen such a cocky person. The guy told the boss that he could destroy him with one punch, but Huang Chao asked him not to let him die as it was too easy. Lu Yi persuaded the anonymous to leave since these guys are the strongest of Huang Chao. But the protagonist said that he always brings things to an end so he will not retract his words. Suddenly a guy from the team pounced on Wei, swinging his bat at him. As soon as the girl saw that he was about to hit the anonymous guy, she was very scared, but didn't know what to do. But Wei wasn't worried in the slightest. He just hit the guy with his bat, and that hit was so hard that the guy flew off to the side. When Huang Chao's team saw their partner lying on the ground and his health scale at 0, they all immediately fell silent. At this moment, Lu Yi was very frightened, as she couldn't even imagine what to expect, while the team was unbearably angry at the stranger who dared to destroy their partner. Wu Lan with a worried look didn't understand what was wrong and why their partner couldn't fight back. Huang Chao, on the other hand, suggested that it might be a bug in the game. Wei ordered the boys to apologize and otherwise threatened to massacre them all. Huan yelled for him to stop pretending since none of his team was afraid. After that, he instructed the entire team to go on the offensive and straighten this guy out. But the players didn't even have time to run up to Wei and hit him. The protagonist swung his powerful bat and all the guys immediately hit the floor with 0 health. From Huang Chao's team, only Wu Lan and 2 other guys were left. They stood there and didn't even know what to say, as the stranger had wiped out all of their partners in a few seconds. Here the guys already panicked and decided that in this case they should run as fast as possible. The next second, Wei was over Huang Chao's head with the words that it was too late to run. The guy tried to stop the protagonist before striking, but the young man started beating his two assistants while their boss and his girlfriend started running away. The other players saw a stranger on the battlefield and learned that it was the same anonymous person who had won first place in the Divine Punishment Tower and the Demon Conqueror Tower. When Wei was done with his subordinates, he stood over the boss and said that it was his turn. The guy started begging for mercy as he knew that he would easily destroy him now. But it was as if the protagonist didn't hear him. He immediately dealt him a powerful blow. After that, the young man approached Wulan and said that she should apologize, or else there would never be peace in their guild. The girl immediately agreed, as she was very scared. She knelt down, bent over, and began to apologize to Lu Yi for causing unnecessary trouble. Lu Yi was already ready to forgive, since she did apologize, but Wei beat her to it by saying that he couldn't just let it go, and some blood would have to be spilled after all. Wulan started trying to make amends and gave the girl her powerful bat as a sign of sincerity between them. Players who were watching were shocked that she offered her shard bat, as it cannot be bought with any money. Such equipment is priceless. Juju approached the girl saying that no one expected that she knew such a powerful boss, because he had defeated an entire union alone. Lu Yi nevertheless accepted the battle from her rival. She thanked the anonymous man and asked if he could at least say who he was. The young man replied that his name was Wu Min, and he was a friend of her older brother. The girl offered him to accept a bat with shards as a token of gratitude, but Wei said he couldn't accept such an expensive gift since he hadn't done anything special. He also added that he could lose such a valuable weapon and insisted that the girl keep it. Wei told Lu Yi that now all her problems and his are his problems. Anyone who dares to offend or intimidate her will be finished, he told her, most importantly, to tell it to him. After that, the young man left. The girls looked at him, and Juju, with a happy expression on her face, said that now she had nothing to worry about. After the fight, Wei Wu returned to his territory of Renai Peak, where his entire team was waiting for him. He picked up his little beast in his arms and said that mana was very slow to accumulate, and so he didn't know what the effect of the mana pill given to the Divine Punishment Tower daily would be, causing him to decide to wait until tomorrow. For a better battle, the young man decided he needed to upgrade his gear and called his entire squad to follow him. After 2 hours, the guy was able to destroy enough demon tigers at level 15, for which he received a talent, and his attack doubled. He decided to check if there were any new equipment and found that the Korean server had the highest level, namely level 14. But in the Tiger King's dungeon, level 15 could be raised quite quickly. As he immediately noticed the information about the 3 holy guilds betting on themselves, they should also be the first guild to clean the Tiger King's dungeon. The 3 sacred guilds interested the guy, and he decided to go and check out this dungeon with his entire team. At this time, Lindsay's partner alerted her that a live broadcast had started on a Korean server where they were cleaning the Tiger King's dungeon, and it seems they want to give them a bang for their buck. On the screen, they saw information about the highest level, which was 1 level higher than their server. The girls decided that it would be very good to cooperate with him, but they didn't have any information about the Tiger King's dungeons, and the girl asked if they could actually surpass them. Lindsay replied that it all depended on the decisions Wei Woduquan and Wu Ming would make. At this time, Wei and his team had an excellent fight with the striped tiger Chiqing and received 2,000 points, a tiger tooth, a tiger skin in several sets for destroying it. The young man was rewarded with a great deal of experience in green-colored gear. Wei decided to wear the boots he had received. For this, he gained enough armor, strength, agility, and physique, and his movement speed was increased by 8%. With these boots, he had even more agility in fighting monsters. Wei liked them a lot. He shouted to his team to rush into battle altogether, whereupon they managed to drive the powerful tiger out of the way. As a reward, he received an exquisite 12th level tiger skin hat, which also gave good skills. His next opponent was again a striped tiger, which was very large in size and looked quite powerful. Wei began to fight him, though he managed it not badly, but all the monster was also doing damage to him. At this time, Lindsay and his partner were looking at the attributes of the hat they saw on sale. Suddenly, the girl shouted out that the team strength of the 3 sacred guilds team had increased. The partner said that the Korean server started attacking them, bragging that they were the best team. The girl started to worry about their team, and was looking forward to Wei Wo and Wu Min coming. Wei in turn defeated the Dark Moon Tiger King, who was 18th level. For this, the young man received 800 points of Heaven and Earth aura, as well as other attributes. For defeating a 19th level Golden Shadow Tyrant King, the protagonist gained over 9,000 experience and many other attributes. Suddenly, the guy saw that he didn't get a single blue item. He got a new outfit, namely leggings, which were not bad at all. As it turned out, this place even has a hidden boss, and it was the first hidden boss on this server. The young man was looking forward to this quest, and if he accepted it, the dungeon time would be extended. At this time, things on the Korean server were not very comforting. The players had been mopped up 5 times already, which meant that this boss was really hard to defeat, but it looked like they were very close to it. After 3 minutes, the players finally passed the first boss despite the fact that it was quite hard to do so. For this, the boys received 3 green items. The guys were ready to go on and beat China and Japan. Suddenly, Lindsay discovered a problem, which was that with 3 green objects, the 3 saints became even stronger. Her partner said that in such a case, it was not even worth competing, because it was very hard to form such a team in China. And then the guys remembered about Wei Wo Du Quan and the Anonymous, as it was not clear why they did not do anything in such a situation. The guys were sure that it was the guys who couldn't just talk and do nothing, as the 3 saints said. Wei, on the other hand, was almost at victory with a powerful monster and didn't follow the situation on the server.
He finally managed to defeat the shadowy fierce tiger and was rewarded with fierce tiger blood. He also got 2 blue items, and the guy decided that he should check the attributes on his jacket.
After reading the information about the rare cloak he had received, which combined the powers of wind and night, the guy immediately wanted to wear it, as the thing was very valuable and useful. But he also needed pants to go with it, since he was still wearing his rookie pants. But Wei didn't know where to get them. Suddenly he got a notification that there was an opportunity to fight another hidden boss, which was very surprising to the guy. He decided to wait 10 minutes before he started. He also hoped his pants would fall out of his negs. At this time, the players were on standby to break through the monsters as they had new equipment. The second team glared angrily at their opponents with words that when they had level 13, they too would be able to break through, and once they could handle the boss and get the equipment, then they would have the opportunity to start the virtuoso cycle. 20 minutes later, Wei was approaching the next monster with his weapon pointed. But as soon as he was too close to the tiger, his body began to freeze in place. The tiger used his freezing skill. The young man immediately started trying to get out of this position. Fortunately, he was able to break the barrier that was created out of ice. After that, he shouted to the monster that his blood was thick, and his skills wouldn't work on it. With these words, he struck a sharp blow at the monster with his sword, and lo and behold, the notification came that the frost-fierce tiger had been destroyed. As a reward, the young man received level 6 shards and 2 blue items, which was a very good reward. He also received a dark frost mantra, but Wei was a bit upset since he wanted to get pants. The message with the next hidden boss did not come to the guy, and he thought that it was not time yet, and the third boss did not appear, so he decided to try again later. He was the first to go through this cave completely, because of which he received the title of Tiger Catcher. The effect of the title was that all base attributes were increased by 10%. He received a message offering that his score would be recorded in the server leaderboard for the Tiger King dungeon, and his ID would be displayed in the table if he wished. But Wei decided to decline the offer. When Wei read that he would only be able to re-enter the cave after half an hour, he decided that it would be better to leave the cave and farm the monsters outside. But on the way out, he was met with an unexpected surprise. There were many people near the cave, and he did not know why they were all there. People admired the stranger. They were also surprised by the rare gear that he was wearing. They assumed that he was the anonymous man who had cleaned out the entire cave of the Tiger King. The young man did not like the fact that there would always be a group of people who would recognize him, and decided that it was better to run away. But this action people admired even more as he was incredibly fast. The guys assumed that the Koreans were too arrogant and therefore Anonymous would punish them. The boss of this team tapped the system screen to check the leaderboard. The 3 sacred caves were cleared in 46 minutes and 24 seconds, the time in which the last boss was defeated. At this time, the Koreans deftly fought the boss and were victorious in this battle. They were able to destroy the monster in 47 minutes and 44 seconds, which was an excellent result. They were rewarded with a blue weapon. The guys were looking at the screen where the Japanese were saying arrogant phrases towards the Koreans. The guys were saying that it was over the top since it was just a cave. Gulan asked the Koreans to open their eyes and look at the situation from a different perspective. He talked about the leaderboard and who's in what place. When the information on the screen was seen by Lindsay and his partner, they were shocked since according to the leaderboard, Anonymous had cleared the entire cave by himself. Some players were mad as they didn't believe he could have cleaned it up so fast and claimed it was photoshopped as there isn't even a video of the work. Gulan started to say that according to the official website, the Tiger King's cave could be passed through in 30 minutes and they could wait for the anonymous man to come back, and then they would see him kick all of their asses. Lindsay took Shanshan's hand and dragged her to the cave since she wanted to start a streamer there. Half an hour later, Anonymous returned to the cave, where a huge crowd of people awaited him again, which he was not happy about. Lindsay began to thank Wei admiringly for helping the Chinese players vent their anger. The guy made a casual appearance and motioned for people to disperse so he could walk forward. The players immediately dispersed to the side and let him pass forward with a bow. The young man wondered suspiciously what all these people were doing here, but immediately dismissed his thoughts. as it was more important to knock out the Greaves. As soon as Anonymous entered the dungeon, players immediately started streaming to see how he would do this time. Wei at this time told his boys to be quicker this time. After that, they all began to do battle with the big and powerful monsters together. His level was soon raised again, giving him the ability to destroy monsters even faster. Lindsay said in a slightly anxious voice that she hoped this time the Anonymous could clear the cave even faster. Suddenly, Shanshan told her that the Holy Trio had borrowed equipment from a friendly Ding guild, and they probably wanted to overtake the Anonymous. These guys have bonus gear, so they are even faster than before, which is a problem. The Holy Trio managed to destroy the monster in 39 minutes and 3 seconds, and it wasn't a bad result. Gulan informed everyone that they had borrowed equipment from another guild, so Anonymous wouldn't be able to break their record. People started demanding Wei Woduquan to come, as together they could do it faster. Wei, on the other hand, was determined to win since he was sure that his pants would fall out of the third-level boss, so he was ready to tackle it as quickly as possible. In front of him was an incredibly large monster. This level was called the Rage of the Boss Tiger, which was very powerful, which meant that something very valuable should fall out as a reward. Soon, Wei managed to destroy such a strong level 19 monster, for which he received many attributes and points. Finally, the long-awaited level 15 Blue Night Stalkers had fallen to him, but the new equipment the young man got from the monster made him speechless. A black iron ghost gold sword fell out to him, as well as a purple tiger head and a dragon tear. The time to clear the cave was 38 minutes and 44 seconds, thanks to which he broke the previous record set by the Holy Trinity. But the young man refused to have his result posted on the public server. He asked the system to show him information about the Greaves and the dragon tear. The effect of the blue Greaves was blue true flame. The dragon tear had the effect of a tiger coming down a mountain, and the tiger tear had the effect of a tiger roaring. Wei took the dual swords he got from that monster. Each of them had different attributes, but it still wasn't a bad bonus. The players who were waiting for the guy at the exit were getting worried as 40 minutes passed, and the guy didn't show up. They had already decided that the Koreans had really won. But Lin Zi didn't believe it, and said that she needed to see everything with her own eyes to be sure. After saying that, she started searching for information on the Universal Server. As it turned out, the girl was right, and Anonymous was able to break the Koreans' record and took first place in the Gold Din Guild. All of a sudden, Wei appeared behind her back. The girl was very frightened by his appearance, because she didn't expect to see him behind her back. He covered his face a little with his cloak. There were too many people around, which was inappropriate for him. People began shouting compliments in his direction and admiring his weapons. He was admired by girls and asked to take at least one look at his purple gear. The guy sweetly agreed to their requests. He asked the girls to give a pass to accomplish what they asked. To do so, he opened the system screen. After that, players saw his purple swords. It was the first purple gear on the server. Wei once again lightly covered his face with his cloak and decided that he would return here in half an hour. Lindsay had said that she would wait for him here while he went to mop up the dungeon again. He turned around on the cave saying that it's a great place, so if a player isn't farming it for money, what's the point of farming it in the first place? After 40 minutes, the Holy Trinity were able to clear the cave in 36 minutes and 22 seconds. The people hoped that Anonymous could break that record as well. After a while, Wei was once again in the cave and mopping up the monsters. He liked the new weapon very much, as it was easy to use. The time it took him to clear the cave was 31 minutes, and he broke the record of the Holy Trinity once again. He was able to pass monsters with ease and quickly, so he decided to watch the other bosses. This time he had 22 units of green equipment, 11 units of blue equipment, 1 tiger tear, a few materials, over 200,000 experience. This was all enough for him, so the young man decided that it was time to call it a day. Even though Wei managed to set a new record, the 4 strongest guilds formed by teams of 5 had made a promise that they could defeat them. Lindsay wasn't too worried about it, as she was sure that Anonymous would be even faster next time. 40 minutes later, an anonymous man came out of the cave. The girl was puzzled as she didn't understand how he was able to come out in less than 10 minutes. The players began to whisper that he might have lost to a monster, but it wasn't like it was his fault since the monsters were very weak to begin with. Wei started talking to himself in his voice, so that everyone could hear that he had been destroyed because of his own stupidity. He checked his gear and accidentally set out, and that seemed to count as completing the mission. Lindsay told him not to blame himself since he had done his best, but then the realization of his words came to her when he said that he had completed the mission. To check her suspicions, the girl opened the record table to see where Anonymous stood. When she saw the information about the record, the girl was shocked. It turned out that Anonymous was still in first place, except that he was able to complete the mission in only 9 minutes and 32 seconds. Lindsay didn't know if it was even possible. The guys immediately started sending this information to the Koreans so that they could see that they were unable to defeat this man who was so cool. On the leaderboard, there was information that first place in the sweep mission went to Anonymous. When the Koreans saw the results, they were immediately enveloped in aggression, as the guy managed it in just 9 minutes. They said that this can't happen. And maybe he succeeded because of the weird gear that fell out of the secret bosses. The guys did not know where to go because the gap is too big, and they will definitely not be able to beat his record, no matter how hard they try. The guy asked his friend to close the official site, as they would be humiliated for the rest of their lives. Wei continued to pretend that he regretted making such a fatal mistake and ending the mission. The boys stood behind him and marveled at the Anonymous scolding himself for such an excellent result. The young man, however, decided to stay here and sell all the gear he had accumulated. Since Wei completed the cave challenge in less than 10 minutes, the server will double the experience he receives for 24 hours. The protagonist didn't even expect that there would be such a nice bonus. He was going to sell the gear under the guild's name. The white gear was at the market price. The green gear was a bit more expensive, but he didn't know how to sell the blue and purple gear. This gear requires level 15, but after all, no one would know their true value if he sold them now. Suddenly, he saw in the forum that the players were in urgent need of materials, which he had. He decided to put up the ones he had for 300 coins, so they should be sold out very quickly. Just like that, the young man realized that he now had over 1,000, which meant the materials were very valuable. 15 minutes later, he had over 500,000 in his account for materials sold. As a result, he still had 17 drops of the Shining Tiger's blood and 2 of its heads. At first, he decided to go back to Genai Mountain to fight the divine monsters, so his level would rise more slowly, and if he farmed more, he would receive accordingly. And so, he defeated another monster in the Tiger King's cave, where he once again received a good reward. Suddenly, he received an unexpected call from Li Muhua. When he answered the phone, he heard that Li Muhua wanted to buy materials from him for double the price, namely teeth, hide, bones, bile, claws, tiger's heart and all for 100 pieces each. The guy agreed to his terms, as here his comrade said that Wei's persona was revealed, and someone offline would see that it was him, and if he wanted to hide again, Li Muhua promised to help him do so. Making that much money at a time was great, as was the game itself, but the guy realized he had to be careful here. He asked his partner to help him and his sister go into hiding for a while, and as a thank you, Li Muhua and his team might not have to pay double the price for materials. The partner added that if anyone recognizes him, they won't be able to find him on the internet. Li Muhua took off his helmet. His friend immediately started talking about the problem on there and the overseas server. If they unite, they will tank them. The guy replied that it would be seen a little later. For now, they could rely on Lu Chen. The next day, early in the morning, Wei counted his savings. In total, he had more than 2 million plus the 3 million he had received before. At this time, his opposing team was gathering in one place to discuss a plan of action. So far, their mission was to prevent Anonymous from earning double experience. The boss said that this guy always farms in the Tiger King cave. That's where they were going to wait for him. He ordered the summoners to be sure to cast a soul spell on the Anonymous, so that he would not be able to ask for help or withdraw from battle when leading his squad. He also added that he is doing all this so that Korea can defeat China in the future. So they are obligated to complete this mission. Also, it will be a nice bonus for them if they can loot his equipment. A guy from the team suggested to Razor to leave this anonymous guy alone, as he defends the dungeon alone faster than all their teams combined. The boss replied that they had nothing to worry about, as players from other countries would join them. The boss has instructed his team, who are to attack the Chinese players, and they in turn will be responsible for destroying the Anonymous. The second team, before attacking, hid their IDs so no one would figure out their identity. After that, all teams were ready and went in search of the Anonymous. Wei was standing outside the cave at this time. He decided to go mop up one more time and go rest, since he hadn't slept all night. But his premonition did not fail the lad. He felt that there were many people hiding in the forest and running from place to place, which was very bad. 36 minutes later, the protagonist was lying on a rock and resting. He didn't even want to pass out. He decided to stay in the dungeon and take a short nap. At this time, the teams were waiting for the Anonymous to emerge from the cave to attack it. But 40 minutes later, not a single sound was heard from the cave. Razor told them not to worry, because their attack strategy is good and the Chinese won't be able to level up that fast. Lindsay and Shan were watching another fight. It was another group of players with hidden IDs attacking other players. Based on the information on the official site, this is not only happening in their region, the whole China server is in danger. The girl suggested that these people came from other servers, and they are foreign players looking for them. Suddenly, one player from that team was behind her back and suddenly started attacking her. Lin Ying started running away, shouting that she was madly pissed off by such a huge number of foreign players. And now, it was 4 o'clock in the afternoon outside. Roser and his team laughed at the fact that all the old ones had sent a total of 400,000 elites to attack China. The girl looked at the forma screen with a sad face and waited for Wei Woduquan's answer. She was also worried about where the anonymous person was now. After a few hours of sleep, Wei finally woke up. He really enjoyed sleeping in the dungeon, but he was already hungry. He saw many messages from Feng Ling and was very surprised as he didn't expect it. After reading everything she wrote, the guy was mad at the foreign players who attack players all over the server, all to keep the Chinese from swinging. But not only do they destroy them, they guard the bodies. Suddenly his phone rang, with Xiao Yi's name written on the screen. The guy took off his helmet to answer the phone. His sister was crying into the phone. She started to tell him that the shards the guild had given the girl had blown up, just like her pants. The guild leader had high hopes for her, and gave her good equipment for the double experience period, but all of her equipment was blown up. The girl didn't know how to explain all this to the guild leader. This gear is the property of the guild, and she should give it to the next player soon. Wei asked her to calm down as it was just a gear and promised to help her. Xiao Yi also revealed that the foreigners use skills to guard the lifeless bodies of the players. Now she can't revive as it will be the same point where she was destroyed, and they will do it again once she revives. Wei asked the girl where her body was with a sharp look, then promised to send his friend to fetch it. Xiao Yi explained that her body was in the southeastern part of the 100 Beasts Mountain. She also added that Wei should not put his friends in danger. He put on his helmet and was serious about taking revenge on these people. Razor's aides told him that another team had come to rescue the Anonymous, and this time it consisted of 400 people. But it was not a problem for them, as they were going to destroy this team, as well as all the previous ones. It was a wild wave team. They were ready to save the Anonymous at any cost, despite the fact that they might die themselves. The guy from the team said that unfortunately they couldn't win, because those players were very strong. They had dozens of dark gold swords and a lot of blue equipment, so they can't do any damage to them at all. Leng Nuo continued to believe in their powers, and said they needed to reduce the pressure on Anonymous anyway. Wei saw that there was a complete upheaval in the server because of these people, so he was willing to do anything to get rid of them. Full of strength and intention, he approached this place closer and closer. As soon as the foreigners noticed the anonymous man on his way to them, they immediately got excited, as they had been trying to meet him for a very long time. Razor raised his sword at chest level, then alerted all the guys on the team that the anonymous man himself had come to them. In that instant, he ordered his team to open fire and turn the guy into a pile of ashes, since he had kept him waiting for a whole 7 hours. When the foreigners almost approached the guy in close proximity, Wei didn't budge either. He calmly made the decision to activate his skills. Without giving much physical effort, Wei only made a single swing of his swordfire weapon. Immediately, all of his opponents were eliminated out of the way. One of the foreigners seemed frozen in place, surprised. He didn't know what to say. It was the first time he had seen such a thing in the whole game. The team of Wild Waves, although they were surprised, but still, quite expected such actions from the Anonymous. After what they saw, they were interested in the question of what kind of reservation in the Anonymous. The only difference between Koreans and Chinese was that the Chinese had divine beasts. Razor remembered that 8 of the 5 divine beasts had been destroyed by Wei, and the rest by a mysterious stranger. Wei began to pull out his 2 swords from behind his back, and at this moment asked the foreigners how they even dare to do such a thing in China. Did they really think they were so defenseless? After his words, the guy decided to act immediately and not wait for explanations. He immediately activated the wind movement. Rosa received an unexpected blow from Wei in the form of a tiger downhill skill. With the swing of a single sword, the young man managed to throw off almost everyone who was too close to him. Such a bright beam blinded some players. The vice president said that one could not worry about the fact that their guild leader might not be there, because there was a guild leader anyway. But then his words were interrupted by Wei, who called bullshit on what he was saying. After that, he swept over the guy with incredible speed, and in a moment, hit him with his swords, thus piercing his armor. The other players started trying to fight the Anonymous and give him a mod kick in return, but all their attempts were futile as Wei immediately destroyed them. The girls that watched the Anonymous man's work admired his strength. They were sure that Koreans would not dare to come to these lands again, since Wei had made them realize what it was like to step into someone else's territory. 20 minutes later, Wei said he had to leave for a while and asked the guys to gather up all the gear that had fallen out in that time. The players set about doing what the anonymous man had asked them to do. But they wondered if they would give it back, because the Koreans had in turn destroyed a lot of their equipment. Suddenly, the young man was caught up with the guys to get an answer. The protagonist explained that no one will give them the equipment. He is using it as bait. The guy thanked the guys for keeping it all a secret, then put on his mask to finally help Xiao Yi. At this time, his sister, along with her team, were lying powerless on the ground under the supervision of the foreigners. The girl hoped that her brother's friend wouldn't come, as the place was full of foreigners, and she didn't want to put anyone in danger. As suddenly some guy burst into their valley and dashed between the players at a very high speed. When the girl saw him, she immediately realized that this was the same friend of her brother's he was talking about, but it didn't fit in her head that this strong guy turned out to be his friend. He stopped right in front of the girl, who wouldn't stop admiring his strength. The young man turned to the remaining players and said that all these things from the foreigners were now theirs. They will cover the shards that the boys lost, as well as many more. Xiao Yi asked with a shocked look if he was her brother's friend. The young man confirmed her words and said if she wanted to thank, she should thank her brother. The protagonist realized that in all likelihood the main entrance to the dungeon was almost secure. Soon he returned to the entrance of the dungeon where a crowd of players were waiting for him. They had collected all the weapons as the guy had requested. Wei began to raise his two swords into the air with the words that it was time to put the bait into action and finally finish off these foreigners. Fire emanated from his swords while the surprised looks of the players around him were intently focused on his actions. Once the players saw that Anonymous had the Sword of Tiger Tears, they were amazed as it was too expensive an item. The girl immediately suggested notifying the overseas servers, as they claimed that hundreds of thousands of elites had come to the Chinese server to destroy them. Players on the stream addressed the Koreans, taunting them for having gear in Zone 122 and the fact that they can't come and get it. Holy Trinity Guild. The guys found out that a huge number of dead players were armed in a certain area. Players from their team checked and found out that they had left 2 Tiger Tear swords there. Suddenly, the guys saw the foreign players coming back one by one. But as it turned out, there were not only foreign players here, but also players from the foreign zone, and they all gathered to look at the weapons. The guys started to support the Anonymous and believed he could handle them. Wei asked the players to pick up all the weapons and follow his lead. Leng Nuo, like the rest of the guys, was worried about the guild leader and asked him to be careful. He picked up his weapon to be at the ready and headed towards the foreign players. As soon as the young man approached them, the players immediately rushed at him, shouting that they would destroy him right now. To begin with, the protagonist activated the skills of a tiger coming down the mountain. After which, waving his sword, he used one of the strongest skills, namely Azure Flame and True Fire. Many players from overseas servers were defeated immediately after the first hit of the main character. They were very concerned that the Chinese server had such a scary monster that no one could handle. Team Wei continued to marvel that Anonymous was cutting these guys down like grass, as he was incredibly strong, and seemed to be getting even stronger. The young man asked the overseas players if they were the people behind the attack on the players during the double experience event. Rozor was very angry with Wei. He asked why he was so arrogant towards others, saying that he only relied on divine beasts. The players seemed to think that he was so strong just because he had divine beasts, but that didn't bother the young man in any way. He asked the players if their level would have been higher if it wasn't for the delay that was caused by the public assignment. The Koreans only replied that it didn't matter, because with level 15 and blue gear, their leveling would go faster. Wei wasn't going to take this game so seriously, but Razor made the young man angry. He decided they needed to be taught a lesson, so he gave them 5 days, during which time they must pay compensation and apologize to all the Chinese players. The Koreans immediately laughed at his words. They had no intention of asking for forgiveness and claimed that he could only dream of it. After which the protagonist turned to them with a menacing look with the phrase that he was sure they would come back to him with an apology in even less than 5 days. Suddenly he waved his 2 swords, thus knocking many Koreans out of the way. When the protagonist returned to his guys, the girls immediately started saying words of gratitude and how much they admire him. But Leng Nuo was worried that they were making such a mess, so the plan to catch up with them on the level failed. The protagonist said that they didn't have everything finished yet, so everything was ahead of them. After that, the young man took off his mask with the words that he was very tired, so he needed to rest. Wei took off his helmet and returned to his reality. He decided that he would rest for the time being, and tomorrow he would return to the game with renewed vigor. 10 hours later, he returned to the Korean server. Although he missed the opportunity to earn money in the Tiger King's dungeon, but what they said was true. Those who dare to insult China will be destroyed. The young man looked around and realized that the entrance to the Lost Garden of Eden must not be far away at all. He was sure that this place was right here, and so soon he all succeeded in finding that very Garden of Eden. The protagonist confidently headed for the entrance to the Lost Garden, and was ready to give all the foreigners what they deserved for what they had done. Suddenly he received a notification to complete a quest that involved fighting an invasion, but this quest required a fusion of silvers, which was a large sum. The players were equally surprised at this divine beast quest, but they were excited to be able to participate in the quest since they, too, had a divine beast. One person would be able to hold off 10,000 enemies, so Wei decided to stay here and watch them do this task. He was preparing a trap for them in the form of spreading poison mist along with monsters all over the server. After a while, quite a few players from different guilds and servers gathered at the location. 2 girls and a guy were also looking for the entrance to the abandoned Garden of Eden. One of the girls suddenly exclaimed that she had found the entrance. She was attacked by several monsters at the same time. The leader of the Korean Three Saints Guild ordered the live broadcast to begin. The Chinese must see how their guild handles divine monsters. Lindsay exclaimed that the Koreans had managed to find an abandoned garden. In addition, the players on their server were getting stronger and stronger. A group of Koreans were at this time approaching the entrance to the garden. They were heatedly discussing the Chinese players who must be disappointed with the game. Suddenly, they saw a tall masked guy with a sword blocking the path. Lu Chung said that the way to the abandoned location was to fight him. The guild leader of the Three Saints Guild saw the rare equipment on the young man and exclaimed that it was the same Anonymous. His companion couldn't understand how the boy had beaten them to it. The players from China who were watching the broadcast hissed. One of the guys didn't believe that Anonymous could defeat the Korean server alone. The Korean leader shouted to his subordinates that there was nothing to fear. This poisonous mist corrodes rust, and this warrior came before them. He ordered all the guild members to attack Anonymous. There were too many of them, so the guy wouldn't have a single chance to survive. What the Koreans didn't know was that Lu Chen was actually a monster, and the poisonous mist that corroded metal was his advantage. It seemed to Lin Zi that the fog had no effect on him at all. Shan stated that Anonymous's attacks had become more powerful. After a while, the Koreans' ranks thinned considerably. They began to doubt that the fog had no effect on him. The leader angrily ordered the attack to continue. Lu Chen frowned at the enemies that continued to arrive. He knew that he would stop any number of opponents no matter how many appeared. The girls were proud of their boss. He single-handedly held the pass against 10,000 enemies, truly an army of one man. The pretty girl in the red dress watched the outcome of the fight intently. He couldn't help but admit that Anonymous was very impressive. An hour later, no one watching the live broadcast doubted Anonymous's victory. The fog was quickly corroding the metal on the players' equipment, but Anonymous proved to be too strong even without a weapon. The bald man shouted in panic that their battle was finally lost. The guild leader went for the last step. He confusedly tried to imagine one of the players wearing elite blue metal armor. Lu Chen refused. He said glumly that he wasn't interested in negotiations at all. The time for them had not yet come. The man angrily exclaimed that Anonymous didn't even know who the guy was in the real world. The young man replied that he didn't care. The Korean in elite armor turned around to the guild leader and stated that in that case they had nothing more to do here. It was time to leave. All the players from the Korean server had to turn around and follow the head from the strongest group. When everyone had left, Lu Chen took off his mask and summoned a huge purple dragon. He asked it to wake him up if necessary. Waking up at 6 o'clock in the morning at his home, the young man was surprised to find that the Koreans did not even try to counterattack, and laughed. At this time, the players on the Korean server were not laughing at all. The main city of their server was slowly being enveloped by a lilac fog. Some people were regretting that they wouldn't be able to leave the city. The girl in the magician's costume said that it was much worse. They might lose the server. In the same hour, a delegation of top players from the Korean server arrived at Anonymous to deeply apologize for the insults received from their server. All the players on the Chinese server rejoiced. It was only fair. One of the men shouted that he had now admitted his mistake. Anonymous was unwavering. He was not interested in the opinion of the players on the Korean server. He drew his weapon and demanded to leave immediately. The Three Saints Guild's liar exclaimed that this was going too far. The victor shouldn't act so cruelly. The young man raised his sword and recalled that the 7 nations had united in attacking China and thought they could be forgiven. In fact, they could only dream of it. One of the guys angrily shouted that Anonymous wasn't playing by the rules. This is just outrageous. Lu Chen replied that during the attack on the Chinese server, no one worried about it. Compared to them, he is very merciful. The chairman of a Korean guild asked when Anonymous would leave their server. The young man replied that everything depended on their sincerity, and chased the representative away. A man suggested going back to the others and discussing. The second guy suggested teaming up with the other players. At this time, Lin Zi introduced Feng Yang, the chairman of the Japanese server, and the other 177 top players who attacked the Chinese server on the streamer. Everyone fell to their knees as one. Feng Yang almost cried and begged the Chinese server players to forgive their reckless actions. The girl thoughtfully asked what made the players on the Japanese server apologize. One of the guys suggested that Anonymous had gotten to them too. The Japanese leader presented some equipment as an apology in the hope that it would brighten the losses of the Chinese army. The list was impressive. Among other things, there were 30 green sets of equipment. The exact same shipment had gone to the other 300 regions of China. The young man only asked for one thing. Lindsay should put in a good word with Anonymous to leave the Japanese server alone. The girl happily showed the list of donated gear live on air and proudly said that the Chinese server is not easily intimidated. Suddenly she found that the representatives of the other 5 countries had contacted her as well. There was so much equipment to distribute to all the players. At 8 o'clock in the evening, there was a meeting at the Korean server headquarters. Not only was the city sinking deeper and deeper into fog, but Anonymous wasn't about to accept an apology. Several warriors sought out the man and expressed their desire to make amends. Lu Chen frowned and asked how deeply they repented. The young man said that he could release them in exchange for 4 divine beasts. One of the delegates unhesitatingly offered to pay triple the compensation instead. The boy stated that it was out of the question. After all, he was the one who showed everyone the way to the Misty Forest, so there was no need to piss him off. Lu Chen demanded that the Chinese representatives from the Iron Blood, Red Legion, Black Hawk, and Wild Wave guilds be allowed in. All 4 were overjoyed at the honor of being present next to Anonymous and almost idolized him. The young man offered to follow him. 4 divine monsters needed to be taken away. One of the guys asked in surprise who would be guarding the entrance. Lu Chen laughed and explained that there was no need for that. If the Koreans dared to violate the treaty, they would face serious consequences. After an hour, the young man, along with representatives of the Chinese server, left the location. Korean players wished them a happy journey. Only when the delegates had moved far enough away did the boys breathe a sigh of relief. They were finally free from the oppression of the Chinese server. The next day, Lu Chen got out of bed and did some exercise. He had been very tired for 2 days, but now everything was back to normal. The young man's right leg felt better than his left. He hoped that after some time in the game, the other leg would also heal completely. The young man took out a blue helmet and mentally promised Xiao Yi that it would be a little while before they could walk together. The first thing to do was to check the prices of equipment. It didn't look so bad. It was possible to raise the level of the Legion. A Legion level upgrade allowed the recruitment of an 11th squad member. In addition, the basic skills of the squad improved by a quarter. Lu Cheng rejoiced. Improving the characteristics of each fighter was clearly worth the reputation points spent on them. The guy summoned the entire squad of his monsters. They had a short hike to the Tiger King's cave, and then the equipment could be sold. Unfortunately, he himself had already raided the dungeon 9 times, and now had no right to enter the Tiger King's lair. In addition, Lu Chen had accumulated a whole arsenal and was now wondering how to value it. He decided to organize an auction. The young man summoned a system window and made a mass mailing on behalf of the Wild Wave Guild, inviting them to the auction. This announcement caused a huge stir among the players. One man was hoping to get his hands on Tiger's tears. The others knew that Anonymous wouldn't sell bad things. Lu Chen solemnly opened the auction and started it with the mithril swords. 3 swords in one lot were sold with a starting price of 20,000 yuan. These mythical swords were everyone's dream. The bidders haggled over each other, with the last buyer offering 47,000. The young man himself was surprised at the haggling for swords. He had never imagined that blades were very popular among specialists. After a while, almost all of the gear was sold. The only thing left to offer was a robe that no one had seen yet. The guy tossed his cloak in front of the audience and announced that he wanted to introduce the mantle of Dark Frost, but he would tell more details first. Upon hearing the characteristics, the audience gasped. The equipment that formed a protective ring of frost in front of them was not available for sale on foreign servers. No bidder wanted to give away such a rare piece of equipment to the others. The price quickly rose to 80,000. Lu Chen asked for a moment of attention and clarified that there are 2 pieces of equipment that come with the kit. They are sold together. One of the visitors to the auction immediately held up his hand with a sign. He agreed to take the rare set for 100,000. The young man was very surprised that customers were willing to spend such a huge amount of money on equipment. The real gear was ahead of the curve. He banged a wooden hammer on the table and solemnly announced that the robe had been sold for 100,000. There would be 3 sets of gear in the next lot. All the buyers gasped with delight. No one expected that Anonymous would put up a 3-piece Tiger King outfit. Lu Chen hit the table with a hammer and announced the starting price for the lot with the epic equipment at 100,000 yuan. Everyone offered their price. The set went under the hammer for 170,000 to one of the girls. The others were very jealous of her. The organizer of the auction raised his hand and solemnly announced that he would now auction for the item everyone had been waiting for, Tiger Tears. The young man quickly calculated that he would sell 24 sets at 150,000. Today was clearly his day. Tiger's Tears was a set of 2 purple quality swords. Each of them significantly increased the wielder's strength and attack stats. Of course, everyone wanted to get their hands on such a set. One of the buyers said that this weapon would not even be ashamed to show it at an exhibition. Lu Chen announced the starting price for the lot at 150,000. One of the buyers became the lucky owner of the swords, paying 210,000. The young man decided that next time he would sell 60 units of tiger blood and 20 tiger heads. It was very expensive. Lu Cheng stepped out of the net and took off his helmet with relief. He had finally sold all the equipment. It was time to see how much money he had managed to save. Barely looking at the phone screen, the young man laughed. He now had about 14 million. Suddenly, the guy felt his left leg as good as his right. This meant that the game had healed him completely. Lu Chen started jumping around the room with joy. He promised himself that he would buy Xiao Yi a big villa tomorrow and give him a nice surprise. The next day, the young man went to the sales department of a company called Diamond Manor. He remembered that he had originally only wanted to improve his wealth and didn't even dream of 10 million. The stupid girl is working overtime to help him. One of the saleswomen was just telling the old man that their villas were the best quality in town. The man grumbled that they were also the most expensive. Her friends were gossiping. Not only could she not sell anything, but she had also refused the manager, so now the girl would definitely be fired. The moment Lu Chen crossed the threshold of the office, the female employee sighed brokenly. She had failed to sell the house again. One of the girls looked contemptuously at the poorly dressed visitor and said she wouldn't even try anything. The employee asked the buyer which house he would prefer to look at. The young man replied that he wanted to buy a villa. Suddenly, he recognized the girl. It was his classmate Su Xiaowei. She is now forced to do sales. Xiaowei offered to tell more about the villas. The young man replied that there was no need for that. He wanted to see the facility at once. The girl smiled and asked where his car was. Lu Chen replied that he didn't have a car yet. One of the girls told her friend that this deal was quite strange. She said that only the crazy Xiaowei could get such customers. The girl paid no attention to them and informed the customer that she had a scooter so she could give the man a ride to the properties. After barely jumping on the scooter, Lu Cheng put his arm around the girl's waist. The guy asked Xiaowei if she recognized him and introduced himself. The girl found it hard to believe. She didn't know how to say it gently, so that the other person wouldn't be offended. The boy said that he was already all right. He asked Xiaowei to tell him about herself. The girl sighed and said that it was a very long story. She told him everything that was in her heart. Xiaowei suggested that she would now have to leave. The interlocutor promised that the manager herself would leave after one call. Lu Chen said on the phone that he wouldn't even interfere. The man just needs to show the card he got and fire the regional manager. The girl listened to the guy's words with astonishment. He said that after his intervention, even the CEO would crawl on his knees and beg for mercy. After looking at the brief information about the villa, Lu Chen said that 8 million was not much at all. He also wanted to talk about Su Xiaowei, who was about to be fired. The man in the red suit laughed and suggested that the young man wasn't just here to buy a villa. One of the female employees exclaimed that this guy is definitely not buying a villa. He doesn't even have his own car. Manager Wang frowned and assumed that the customer only came here because of the girl. Lu Cheng asked, "What does that change?" The man said triumphantly that he was allowing himself too much and didn't realize who was the boss. He called security to throw the customer out. Xiaowei was startled and suggested that she just leave. The young man smiled. For the sake of his classmate, he would bring the matter to a victorious end. Lu Chen put a black credit card on the table and asked if the manager had seen such a card. The man admitted that he had never seen a diamond card. The guy replied that that's the way it should be. If he asked management, they would tell him about the credit card. Wang stated that he is not easily fooled. He incredulously called his boss and asked about the card. The man shouted that such a rare customer had to be served properly. He himself would be here soon. Manager Wang realized he made a mistake. This client is of such a serious level that the boss wants to meet him personally. Just at that moment, the guards came in with batons. One of them menacingly asked who dared to disturb the order in the sales department. The manager yelled for them all to get out of his office. The man recalled in surprise that Wang Huan had called them himself. After they leave, the manager admits he was blind and made a big mistake. He hopes the powerful client will forgive him. Xiao Wei's foe was extremely surprised to see the manager shedding bitter tears over some customer. The manager exclaimed that there was no need to bother the boss about nothing. Lu Cheng asked to wait for the senior manager. He would talk to him himself. Regional manager Liu Yun burst into the office and asked to be introduced to a diamond card customer. The young man showed his black credit card with a smile and hoped he could resolve a small misunderstanding. Liu Yun readily said that he understood everything and told Wang Lu that he was fired. Xiao Wei couldn't believe that this was happening in front of her eyes. The man shouted through tears that he had worked here for a very long time. Liu Yun angrily pointed at the girl and exclaimed that she was also fired. Turning to Xiao Wei, the burly manager informed that the girl would be working here from now on. Liu Yun bowed to the customer and apologized for the inconvenience. As an apology, he would give an additional 30% discount. Lu Chen rejoiced. Besides the fact that he already had a 30% discount on his card, he got one and would end up saving millions. Xiao Wei thanked the guy for his help, and by the way asked if he played computer games. She was currently playing Nine Heavens. The young man expressed his hope that they would meet in the game and waved goodbye. He was glad that he was able to buy a big house for Xiao Yi. In the evening, Lu Chen was level pumping with his squad in one of the graveyards. He had reached the 17th level and could no longer visit the Tiger King. Since there was nothing else to do, the young man decided to kill 1,000 ghost spirits and reach the next level. Suddenly, he saw a strange structure resembling a stone gate. Perhaps it was the entrance to a new location. A ghostly girl was sitting by the gate. She moaned her misfortune and cried out for help. The guy came closer and clarified if she had any additional missions. The girl replied that she could only give out a mission for one person. After quickly familiarizing himself with the terms of the mission, Lu Chen was surprised to learn that it was rewarded with an ancient heart. There was no doubt about it. It was a worthy quest. The young man held out his hands to the gate to activate the quest, and declared that he would take it on. This assignment was going to be really difficult after all. It was about the 22nd level elite resurrectionists. Furthermore, the first attack on the resurrected one had failed. Lu Chen was horrified to find that the spirit was practically immune to his strikes. 2 resurrected spirits flew through the air in unimaginable trajectories. They were causing significant damage to the young man. As he blocked another blow, he realized he wouldn't last long. He decided to try converting the effects of his attacks into mana. With the help of magic, Lu Chen became much faster. The resurrected ones could no longer deal much damage. At the right moment, the young man rushed forward and took away 1,015 health units from one of the resurrected. Almost immediately, the second one died as well. Both of them shrieked horribly and shattered into colored pixels in front of the boy's eyes. The young man triumphantly descended to the ground. The system immediately credited the killing of the 2 elite monsters and credited the rewards. Lu Cheng heaved a sigh of relief. That girl at the stone gate was right. It was hard to deal with the reborn alone. Since the artifacts obtained from the Tiger King's cave needed to recharge, the quest promised to be very long and difficult. After a short rest, the young man rushed to attack the next resurrected. The monster happily moved toward him. 10 hours later, the mission was completed. The ghost girl thanked her savior fervently. Lu Cheng was glad he would finally be able to raise his level. It turns out that the ancient heart can't interact with the human form, and needs to be changed to some other form. The young man happily returned to Quan's appearance and was surprised to find the ghost girl squealing in fear. The jackal carefully took the ancient heart he had received. It exploded in his hand with a blinding white light. The guy felt the incredible power in his body and demanded to see the updated character specs. It was better than he could have expected. At the 18th level, absolutely all the stats had increased, and Lu Chen decided to take a couple more quests.